All right. Good evening, everyone. It's good to have every one of you here in this meeting this evening. Let me share my screen for a few minutes. Um, yes. So this evening, we'll be looking at a panel discussion on guidelines, guidelines on different pathways for medical immigration. All right. And it's a session that promises to be very interesting because we're going to be having our distinguished alumni who are in different parts of the world, um, pushing on with life and, um, they've taken these different pathways to different countries and
Recording in progress.
sorry. All right. Sorry about that. So we have different of our alumni who are distinguished alumni in different places in the UK, in the US, in Canada, that have taken this pathway to progress their career and their lives in different countries outside of our motherland, Nigeria. And we have this great opportunity to have a few of them share with us from their experiences on the pathway that they used to start, to do this, to get to where they are. And so today we're going to be having Dr. Tina Ubani, who is in the United Kingdom, talk to us about the pathway to emigrate to the UK. We have Dr. Sarah Ryan, who will join us by, unfortunately, Dr. Sarah Ryan will not be able to join us in person, but we had a session a few days ago and we recorded the session, and I'll share that session with us on video so that we also get our own perspective. She'll be talking about the US non-residency pathway. Then we also have um, our distinguished Dr. Timothy Achema, who is the General Secretary of this Alumni Association. We tasked him to do an investigation and give us the pathway to Australia, even though he himself is currently in the United Kingdom with his lovely wife, Dr. Tina Ubani. We also have our very own Dr. Nsika Nana, who is in the United States doing a residency. And so I'm glad to see that she's on this panel too, and she has joined us for the meeting. So she'll be taking us on the United States of America residency pathway. And we have our own Dr. Ruth Okayi Ine, used to be known as Dr. Ruth Jimba, who is all the way in Canada. And I think she's doing a residency too. And so she will tell us the pathway to get to Canada. All right. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming. Without wasting much of our time, I think I want to hand over to Dr. Tina Ubani. So, Dr. Tina, my question to you is very simple. We have about 15 minutes per discussant, and then at the end of the whole discussion, we'll take a few questions. So, if you have questions, just note them down in the chat box, and then the respective discussants will take it at the end of the meeting. Please feel free to share this with anybody that is not an alumni member and that is not on our pages. If you think anybody will be interested in this session, please go ahead, and the video will be made available at the end of the day on our YouTube channel as usual. Dr. Tina, welcome to the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much,
Yeah,
Chibolo.
it's good. It's good to
Yeah,
see you after a very long time.
same here.
Thank you.
It's been so long. Thank you
Yes,
too.
yes, yeah.
Yeah.
So my question to you is simple, right? After you greet us, then you now tell us very simply, how can I, as a Nigerian medical doctor, emigrate to the United Kingdom? Just tell me what it entails, the different pathways that I may need to take, and maybe give us a few of the details of things that are needed. Thank you.
Thank you too, Chibolo. Um, right. So the UK, I think the UK in recent times has become like a very hot spot, especially with regards to immigration. A lot of doctors are moving to UK, and that will be because of the ease. It's easier to come here, and it's also it's way cheaper compared to other countries as well. So the UK is like top on the list there for immigration when doctors are thinking to make a move. In simple terms, I think that the first thing will be, is to decide. I would say it's just to decide that you're ready to take this step in your journey. I think that's the first thing. And when you've decided, then every other thing would come through. So the next thing is your IELTS exams, of course. So that's the proficiency, that's the English proficiency exam. That's the next step. And then after the IELTS exam, then you can, write or register for the PLAB exams. PLAB exams are in two parts. There's the part one exam, and then there's also the part two. Part one is usually written in Nigeria, and then the part two is written in the UK. And after passing both exams, you should be able to, register with the GMC and then have your license to practice and go on to look for a job, to be able to come down here. So that's usually the most common route. That's the route that I took when we made the decision to travel. So that's the most common and easiest route, I think, to be able to practice in the UK. And that was the route that I took. Um, the other routes now that are available to come will be also through the Royal College membership exams. That's another route as well. So if you're able to become a member of the Royal College of Physicians, for example, or the Royal College of Surgeons, I think the Royal College of General Practitioners do that as well. You should be able to obstetrics and gynecology too. So writing some of these membership exams can make you eligible to apply for GMC registration for those ones. Oh, yes, Sister Sharon just popped psychiatry. So that's also another option as well, psychiatry too. So, becoming a member of these colleges and writing some of their exams to provide a pathway to be able to come into the UK and practice in the UK. Other things will be, and I think this will be of interest for our younger colleagues, and that will be like the foundation program. So the foundation program now, even for IMGs, like it's a program that is accessible for IMGs as well. And what it basically entails is the foundation program is a 2-year program that starts in August usually, and you'll be able to get like clinical placements to do. So the foundation program is like your house job. So if you're just off school and you're thinking to make the move, I think this will be like a very, very good path, for you to be able to take. Um, what you do for the foundation program is you would have to submit like an online application to the UK Foundation Program Office. That's the UK FPO website. I think for that you should have met some eligibility criteria. So you have to have a read, look through it and see if you've met the criteria for the selection processes, and then you're allocated to a foundation school, and then you're able to do like your year one, year two. And then this is very good because it gives you um that background. You have good experience working with the NHS and seeing how the system is, and you don't have the typical culture shock that we get when we start to work in the NHS. So I think this is a very good route for the younger colleagues who are interested in immigrating to the United Kingdom. Other routes that we have is the MTI Training Initiative, and it's also an initiative that allows IMGs work in the National Health Service. For so the IMT program works like a clinical attachment, and doctors are attached to a clinical team in, a specialty or area of their choice. And then you undergo mentorship, training, education, all of that to be able to in that department. And when you finish, MTI doctors are usually eligible to apply for GMC registration when you complete the program. There's also employment opportunities as well for the MTI program. Um, For the MTI program, you'd have to check MTI scheme providers. There are certain schemes that provide this MTI service, and some of them will be like the BMA. So the BMA is the British Medical Association, or another good one will be the RCP. That's the Royal College of Physicians as well. So this will be, if you've got a bit of some experience in your area of specialty, say you've been in ONG for some years, or you've been in medicine for some years, and just want to take your career to another level, this will be like another good route to go through. So you still have to go on their website and look through their eligibility criteria and be sure that you've met the criteria to be able to apply for this route. I think you'd also need to pay like a certain sum of money for the application fee. You'd be scheduled for an interview as well. And then, if everything works out well, you get an offer. I think that's about the MCI scheme. Um, the GMC, I think, is also providing some sort of provisional license, especially if you have USMLE Step 1 and Step 2. That's another route as well. So if you have your USMLE Step 1 and 2, you can also apply to be GMC registered and get a provisional license at the end of, when you finish your exams and you have your results and all. Um, these are just some of the few pathways that I have, but personally, I took the most common pathway, which is just the PLAB 1, PLAB 2 exams, and writing the MSRE exams. Oh, yes, I forgot the MSRE too. That's another route as well. So you can write the MSRE in your home country and pass the exams, and then come over here and just get into a training role from Nigeria. So that's also another route as well. The MSRE exams are written, I think, twice a year, in January and I think October, September. I'm not very sure. We'll have to cross-check that. And you don't have to pay anything. They're actually free to write. And competition ratios have been crazy in recent times, but that's also another route as well. And a lot of people also coming through that route too. Yeah, I think that is so. I don't think it's exhaustive because I think there's always like new routes. It's about doing like more research and trying to look through what would fit you or what would suit your circumstance, and then making the decision, like I said, to come, I think. And I would really appreciate contributions from other people in UK who are currently practicing now to, give more, shed more light to share your own experiences. Pretty much.
Thank you so much, Tina. You have given us a very beautiful summary um, of some of the available routes to come to the UK or to go to the UK. Thank you so much. You mentioned a couple of things that I just want you to highlight. You mentioned there's a PLAB route, right? So if you're writing
Yeah.
PLAB, you write IELTS, you write PLAB 1 and PLAB 2.
Mhm.
Okay, and then you look for jobs, you do all the registration and look for jobs.
Yeah.
I wanted to ask if you do maybe like the MTI
Mhm.
pathway, do you have to write PLAB too? Do you have to write PLAB exams? Do you know?
Yeah, so the MCI route does not specifically mention or say to one of the eligibility criteria is not actually writing PLAB
After the
because I think you're already undergoing.
training, yes, I think if you're doing the MTI, you don't have to write PLAB to get to the UK to get an attachment. But
Yeah,
afterwards, if you want to stay, do you know if you have to write PLAB?
honestly, I don't know if we
Okay,
have to write PLAB. I think it's one of the other things that we need to find out.
okay, all right,
Read.
that's awesome. Thank you so much. How about those that write the MSRA?
Okay, so
Can you?
succession actually said usually they don't require PLAB.
Oh
So
wow.
I don't think you need to write, but because I think it's a kind of mentorship program and you're being assessed along the way, up until the end of your program. So I think that's enough. If you meet certain competencies, I think that's usually it.
Okay, okay, that's good. So if you're going to do the MTI, you may not need to write PLAB, or you do not need to write PLAB if you're going to stay.
Okay. And then I think Sister Shem also added something as well, but they expect that you must at least be a consultant or a senior registrar.
All right.
So you must have gotten to a certain
A
level in
certain
your
level in
career
your training.
to go
Okay.
through this route. Yeah.
Yes. All
And
right.
resident in your home country too. Yeah.
All right. Thank you. How about the MSRA? Do you need to write PLAB even after writing MSRA exam? Clarify
Yes, you
for us
have.
what was the
You
MSRA
have to
exactly?
actually. Okay, so the MSRA, now I can't even remember the full meaning of MSRA, multi-specialty recruitment assessment. Yes, so that's the title. So the MSRA is an exam that you write to get into specialty training. You apply through the Oriel portal. So you put in your areas of specialty there, and then you pick a date for the exam. So it's multi-specialty. So it means that the questions cut across different specialties. So it depends whether you want to do O&G or regardless of what it is. So you do the exams and then you sit the exams and the results come out. It's very competitive now, but the exam is you can write the exams from your home country and you should have written PLAB. You need to have written PLAB 1 and 2 to be able to sit the MSRA exams, I think.
So okay, so it's somewhat like primaries in Nigeria.
Exactly.
Okay.
It's synonymous to primaries, I think. Yeah.
Okay, that's awesome. So that if you write a plug one, plug two, you write MSRE,
You
then
write
the
it
kind of
to
jobs you'll be
get
looking
into
for.
specialty
Okay,
training.
beautiful,
To get
beautiful.
into so you are going to be employed by say NHS England if you're in England, if you're like me, Northern Ireland. You'll be employed by the NIMTA, the Northern Ireland Medical and Dental Training Association.
Okay. How about the real college exams, the different real colleges, like for example, the MRCOG, MRCS for surgery, MRCOG for O&G. I don't know what the other colleges are called, but if you want to write those exams, do you have to write PLAB to get into the system? I don't know how that works.
No, I don't think you need to write PLAB. You don't need to write PLAB if you have the membership, if you've written the membership exams, but you must complete all the steps, like all the stages.
Okay.
Then you'll be able to use that to register, to
For
apply for GMC registration.
oh
Yeah.
really? Oh, okay. Okay. All right.
So
Doc-
Sister Shima put something in the chat box. She said there is a pathway for psychiatry via Chester University, if you're
Okay.
already training in psychiatry. So I think this will automatically give GMC registration. So I think if somebody is training in psychiatry and you want to come, I think there's a pathway for you in Chester University
Okay,
if
that's
you're already
awesome.
in training. Yeah.
But that's specific to psychiatry.
Yes, that's specific to psychiatry.
All right.
Okay, so this
Awesome.
is very useful information too for
Yes.
those
Yes.
of us that, would
Yes.
like to take.
Um, before I will move on to the next person, I don't know if Sister Sharon is available. I'll give you 2 minutes, Sister Sharon, to talk about maybe some of those peculiarities. But before I leave, Tina, can you take 2 minutes? Tell us about your own story. How did you get to? How did you get from making a decision to getting there? How long did it take? And just give us a summary of your own story in 2 minutes. Thanks,
Yes, so I think
if you don't mind.
myself and yes, I don't mind. Myself and Tim were just really frustrated with the system. I hadn't even gotten into training in Nigeria, and I think we're like in our 40th or so, but training was really hard to come by, and things are not just moving right. And we're just like, okay, we're tired and needed a change, I think. And we wrote the exams. It took okay. It took me. Tim is saying to just talk about myself and not. But we did the exams together. I don't know why he's saying like just talk about just talk about myself.
Just talk about yourself.
Yeah.
Tim will
So
talk about himself. But of course, you cannot tell your
he,
story without his.
exactly
Yeah.
because we literally did this. We did it together. Like so, it took us. It took me. Say I think it was 2 years, right, for everything to go through. Um, it was during the COVID period, so the COVID affected a lot of things. We had to wait for exams, the PLAB 2 exams specifically. So it took us around 2 years or so. So we wrote the PLAB 1 and had to wait to write the PLAB 2 exams, and then wrote the PLAB 2 exams and came here. We got in through, we started with the private route. So we got jobs with NEST. NEST is like a recruitment agency for doctors to work in private hospitals. So that's where we started from. And then I think after a year in NEST, we wrote the MSRE exams. I wrote the MSRE exams too, and then got training position in yeah, got training position. So that's pretty much it. It can be emotionally draining, the preparation and everything. It's not just about emotionally, financially, everything, but I think it's worth it, honestly, and I highly recommend it to doctors.
Thank you so much.
No
Thank you so
regrets at
much,
all.
Tina. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Please stay on to the end just in case others have any questions to ask. If you're not too busy. Thank you so much. Sister Shen,
Thank
would you like to take 2 minutes to talk about anything you want to add to this and maybe about the just 2 minutes, Sister Shen. Thanks.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. Thanks. So for the psychiatry pathway I talked about, like Auntie Tina said, one can go through writing the Royal College exam. So there are times that people write, they start preparing for paper A of the Royal College of Psychiatry exam, paper B as well. And then some people write CASC, which is the final exam. So once some people have the 3 exams, they'll be able to, apply for senior training, that's higher training, ST, in psychiatry with the college, and then they'll be able to get placements. The other route is that people can, there are situations where people come in, they write PLAB all over, they start from the beginning. I know of a senior registrar in psychiatry who had to write all that PLAB and everything, but by the time she even got to her first year in training, she had already passed all her exams and she's still in core training before she now proceeds to senior training. So the other route is that people can go through this masters. For people who are already doing psychiatry, who are already senior registrars, or they've spent at least 2 years. I know of people who did this program. They've spent 2 years in psychiatry. One is a consultant already and came in through that pathway. So with that pathway, they will give them GMC registration straight away, but they will write English exam. And with the GMC registration number, they will now allocate them to hospitals. So the hospital where I work, we have some of them who actually came in via that program. And from there, one of them just finished, she was already a consultant in India, and then she came through that master's route and started working in our hospital. Now she's a locum consultant, even though she didn't write this paper A, paper B, or the Royal College exams. But so now she's already a consultant in the private sector. Then the other person is a Cameroonian lady who, as well, came in through this through the program, finished her master's. And so as she was doing her master's, she was already allocated to our hospital. She was working as well. And then she started writing the MSRE exam. So she didn't have to write PLAB because they've already given her the GMC registration. So GMC registration, once people have GMC registration, they don't need to write PLAB, or as in if they're already consultant and they were able to give them GMC registration due to the professional bodies, exams that they've passed and all that. So we also have that for Royal College of Obstetrics and Gynecology. So for some people like that, once they write those exams, MRCOG, they can come to the UK. But sometimes some hospitals don't offer those MTIs. In the past, our own hospital used to offer pediatrics MTI, but they stopped at some point. So there are still some hospitals who do it. But for that psychiatry, University of Chester is the only university that offers that pathway. For instance, I did masters in psychiatry with Cardiff University. Their own pathway is just more educational. They don't have anything to do with GMC registration. They also don't have anything to do with giving people jobs. So for that university so I will send it to the group. I will send it so that people who are interested can look at it. And then the other way, like we've said before, people can write paper A, paper B exam and then migrate. Thank you. But
Sure.
I came in through PLAB. I came in through PLAB 1, or I was already in the UK at the time, so I had to do PLAB 1, PLAB 2. And the funniest thing was that when I did my PLAB 1, before my PLAB 1 result came out, had already finished my lessons for PLAB 2 because I just knew with the help of God that I would pass. So I didn't have to wait, that 6 weeks for people to start or for the result to come out. So already I knew I would pass. And then I went in to do my PLAB 2. I wrote the PLAB 2 twice. I was heavily pregnant. I passed the stations, but one way or the other, I didn't meet up with the cutoff mark, but I still had to do it again. And then I now did MSRA, which now made me to enter psychiatry training. I wrote all the exams to the glory of God, and I'm in ST5, forensic psychiatry. Thank God. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you so much, Sister Shona.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, everyone. Thanks.
Good. All right.
Thank you.
We still have so many people to talk, so I don't want to drag. We'll just take all our discussions, then we'll take any questions we have. Dr. Tina Obani, God bless you. Thank you so much. We'll
Thank
see
you too,
you
sir. Thank you.
in
God
a
bless
short
you,
while.
sir.
Thank you. Is Dr. Nsika Nana here? Can you please show yourself? That's awesome.
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Dr. Nsika. Good to see you.
To see you too, sir.
It's been such a long time.
Yes.
How is your husband? Let me ask you, how is your husband?
Fine, thank you.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thank you so much for making our time. I know
sure.
I know it's not easy to get people like you. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for being here. So let me ask you very quickly. How does a Nigerian doctor get placements to do a residency training in the United States of America? What are the steps that I need to take if I'm interested? And how does it go? All right, just take it up from there.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'll just share just so that I am
Go ahead,
able
please.
to
Go ahead, please.
keep track of what I'm saying. Okay. So, just give me a minute. So the pathway for US medical residency training, I'm just going to be sharing the residency pathway because that's what I did and where I am right now. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, so I think if you first start with knowing what you want to do in terms of like residency training, I think it's actually really important to know what specialty you want to go into so that you know the peculiarities of towing the path you want to go, like even in the US residency training, and then even like knowing what you like, knowing how the process actually goes. So I would say that it's not the easiest pathway, but it is rewarding in the end. I think most people are, and understandably so, like very concerned about the financial implications. But I think I'll just talk about that towards the end. So first it starts by like knowing what you want to do. Do you want to do family med, internal med? Do you want to do O&G? A subspecialty of surgery, general surgery? How can you get there? That would really help tailor your clinical experience even in Nigeria as you prepare, because it's a residency training, and many times when we are done with house job and NYC, people just get jobs anywhere they can find, like the best paying, the best work hours and everything, which is good. But in the long term, in this pathway, you realize that what you have been doing with your time really counts towards where you are going to. So it's important that if you're doing pediatrics, if you want to do pediatrics, you should be getting pediatrics clinical experience even in Nigeria. So, and just to add, this presentation is really not exhaustive. You would probably need to do a deeper research if this is what you want to pursue long term. Yeah, because the time is very limited. So this is just some of the abbreviations I'll be using just so that I do not say words are over your head. So USML is the medical licensing exam, you take ERAS is the electronic residency application system, OET is the occupational English test, ECFMG is the educational committee for foreign medical graduates. I think I should explain what this is. So ECFMG is a body that handles certification for foreign medical graduates. They are more or less like they are more or less the people that handle certification and more or less like liaise with the programs and for visa sponsorship and all of that. So they're the ones that verify your medical graduate status, that handle your processing more or less. US clinical experience is USCE, and then the NRMP is the National Residency Match Program. So the stages for residency training in the US, I just broke them down into 3 just for this presentation, but you probably can break them down into smaller steps depending. We have a first stage that has to do with your verification. First, they have to verify where you are in terms of your graduate medical status, if you are still a student or if you are graduated already. Medical students can actually take the exams. You don't have to wait till the end of training. So it's actually good if people know this from medical school and are able to utilize this knowledge that they can actually start taking these exams for medical school, especially after part and farm, where the knowledge is still fresh and they can consolidate better. So when you verify your medical graduate status, you take the exams, they're in steps, and then there's the application for the ECFMG pathway and certification. Then ERAS, that's where you start getting interviews, and then there's the rank order list, that's the 3rd stage, the match process and visa sponsorship. So for the first stage, sorry, is my slide moving? Can you see stage 1 right now?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So for the first stage, to start, you need to get a USMLE ID. That's the United States Medical Licensing Exam ID or an ECFMG ID. And you get this from the ECFMG website. There's some web links at the end of this I can share. You need to get an ID first. So it starts with like a couple of things. You fill in a couple of information about yourself, and then they will assign you an ID. The next step is to get notarized. So they would want to verify your identity. So you fill a form called Form 186. It's called the Certification of Identification Form. They verify your identity. It's a paid form. I'll go into details about the payment for this, like how much this will cost at the end of this. So you pay for this. They would verify your identity via a Zoom call. It barely takes 10 minutes. It's just to see, oh, this is the person that has said this is who he is, and then, or who she is, and then you have your current unexpired passports that they would also verify, and then sign a form to just be sure that this is who you are. And then after that one, after verifying, you now apply for the exam. So the first exam is called Step 1. Step 1 is it's a basic, like the basic foundations of medical school, medical training. It's mostly a pathology and pharmacology exam. They also test your knowledge of biochemistry, immunology. They test your knowledge of systems, your cardiology, respiratory, reproductive, neuro, but they test it in terms of part and farm. I don't know how to put it, because we are trained more like in blocks. So there's histopath, there's medicine in general, and all of that. So more or less like saying, when they're asking you cardiology stuff, they're asking you cardiology stuff in terms of the physiology, the pathology. That's like more or less what they ask you in Step 1. So when you apply for the exam, the very first step is you apply for the exam. They'll have to now verify your graduate status. So that's why I talked about ECFMG, that body that helps us to like verify your status. This has to be done in conjunction with your medical school. So for Bingham, the academic office in Cairo does this. When I did mine, I did an online, paper verification. So I needed to pay for my transcripts, and then they sent copies of it and a couple of things to the US. So I had to pay for that as well. I think right now, from what I've gathered, they do more of an online verification. So what you'll be paying Bingham for primarily is transcripts, I believe. Just please correct me if this is incorrect. So you pay for your transcripts, academic office would work with them to verify your graduate status. After that, after they have verified it and you're good to go, they will issue you what is called a scheduling permit that would allow you to take the exams. The exams can be taken at any time of the year, whenever you're ready. There's no set time of the year like where you have, you must take it these dates, these dates, these dates. So it's based on your level of preparation and when you are ready to take it. They also give you eligibility period. So when you're paying for your exam, you would choose a 3-month period in which you feel you would want to take it. So like March to June or April, May, June, rather. April, May, June, March to May. So a 3-month period where you can sit for it. If you feel you're unprepared by the time you are getting to the end of your eligibility period, you would have to request for an extension and move to the next eligibility period. So let's take the exam when you're more prepared. And then after the step 1 exam, you can take your step 2 exam. If you feel like you can even take the 2 exams but together, you can take them. Most people take step 1 first, take a couple of months, prepare for step 2. And then when they're done, the last exam, not the last, but the exam that you need to at least apply is the OET. So they need to assess your clinical skills and communication skills, and they do that through the occupational English test. So you take that one as well. Right now, the step 1 and 2 is only taken in Ghana, I think, for West Africa. I know they take it in Ghana, you take it in Kenya and South Africa. The OET exams, I took mine in Abuja. Most recently, I was hearing that there's no longer a testing center in Nigeria. I don't know if this is true. They said, but when I took, there was one center in Abuja and one in Lagos, or 2 in Lagos and then one in Abuja also. But right now, I'm hearing that it's now only in Ghana, that they moved their centers to Ghana. So you need to verify that information. So you take the OET exam, and then I think that's more about the exams for step 1. So there are three exams actually. There's step 1, step 2, and step 3. But you don't need step 3 to apply for the residency training, at least from Nigeria. If you can't take step 3, you have an added advantage. I'll talk about that later as well. But if you cannot, for the sake of finances, because step 3 is only taken in the United States. So, but most people that are able to take the exams take step 1 and step 2, and then take the English test at the OET. So the second stage is when you're done with your step 1 and step 2 and the OET, you apply through a pathway. So for people who have done house job, for example, and are done with it and have gotten a permanent license, it's usually pathway 1 that is usually taken for most people from Nigeria. So pathway 1 is what we take. You would need a letter of good standing from MDCN. So you would need to apply to MDCM to get a letter of good standing. So together with your OET results that are released to ECFMG, that's the body that handles the certification, you have your step 1 and step 1, which is a pass. Usually it's a pass or fail. Step 2 has a score. They always have a passing score. So each of the exams has a score that you have to pass to get to be able to apply. So step 1 and step 2 is scored more or less, but step 1 is pass or fail. So once you're done with step 1 and step 2 and OET, and you have met the required scores to at least apply, you can now apply for an ECFMD certification. So that certificate is more like a license to say you have gone through the exams, you're doing good, just like a GMC certification, I believe. And then you can now go ahead as an international medical graduate to apply for residency training. So when you have gotten the ECFMD certificate, the next thing to do is to apply for the training. So usually the timeline is whenever you're done with the exams, however long it takes you, the application for residency training starts in September of every year. So every year is when they start the process. So it spans from September to, I would say, June of the next year. So whatever you do, usually people time their applications to be ready by September of every year. So The applications will also entail that you do a program search. So like I said, before you start, I think it's good to know what you want to do in terms of training. Some specialties are easier to get into from outside Nigeria. Some other specialties are harder, and you probably you might want to improve your chances of matching by being in the United States. But other specialties are easier, but not like a walk through, I would say, or a walkover. So specialties like internal medicine, family medicine, pathology, pediatrics, yeah, those ones that are like you at least as of right now, because the requirements for assessments are changing every day. I think COVID did us a lot of good. Before now, you would have to after taking the exams, you would have to come into the US, and then for every interview you get, you have to travel to every program. When I say program, I mean hospital, but not like the entire hospital, but like the departments that you want to train under and interview in person. But because of COVID, the interview shifted to be in person, which was great. But it's now it makes it easier for people that are outside of Nigeria that have never like even been to the US or do not have the opportunity to travel to actually take the interviews from the comfort of their houses. So when you apply for the certification, please can I put on when I have a few minutes left, because I think I'll just go ahead, Babi. So, but when you apply for the certification, you do a program search. So if you want to do internal medicine or family medicine or pediatrics, you start searching for programs that can take you as a trainee. Some programs, like when I say programs, so like say National Hospital Family Medicine Training Program, for example. So family medicine training program in National Hospital, for example, can say, oh, we only take people who are 5 years or less post-graduation. We only take people who have a green card or who would require a J1 visa sponsorship. So you do a program search because not every hospital in the US would take you as a trainee. You also have to look at who have they taken in the past. Are they people that look like you? Are they people that have the same kind of background? Are they taking people who are international medical graduates? Because some programs don't take international medical graduates. Others are very open and take international medical graduates and maybe have certain cutoffs that they want you to meet. Some programs are specific that they want you to have had clinical experience in the US before applying to them. You also need letters of recommendation. So that's also why you need to tailor your experience even back in Nigeria if you want to follow this pathway, so that you don't shoot yourself in the foot. Maybe at the point maybe you're just reading for the exams, you want to apply pediatrics for all this while you have been working in an O&G center or working in a surgery hospital because that's where they are paying the most. At the end of the day, to show that you are committed to that specialty, because they want to see, oh, you want to do pediatrics for the last 1 or 2 years, you have been working in a pediatric hospital and been like improving your skills and still staying up to date. So your letters of recommendation will come from people that you have worked with in the specialty you're interested in training. You can apply to more than one specialty. You don't have to apply to just pediatrics or just family med or internal med or O&G. You can apply to more than one specialty, but of course you have to have worked with those people. And letter of recommendation they require for these applications are usually very thorough, very glowing. That's the word to use, very glowing. It's not Dr. Samuelson is a great doctor and has a great work ethic. He has my highest recommendation. They want to see, like they want experiences from the person you worked with to show that this is someone they can take, primarily because you are coming from outside the US and they need to be reassured by people that you are going to be a team player, you are someone who they can bank on, someone who is teachable and all of that. So it's also a very huge component of the application. You also need a medical school performance evaluation. Bingham has to show that you went through. It's different from this transcript. So it's more like a 7-page document on average that shows how you went through each of your rotations, how you performed, where you kind of like ranked in your class. We don't really have that in Bingham. So sometimes it's just an extrapolation. So more or less like a document to show how you performed in medical school. Then for each specialty you apply to, you have to write a personal statement to say why you are committed to that specialty. If you want to apply to pediatrics. I'm saying pediatrics. So for me, I applied family medicine. I also applied internal medicine. I also applied in medicine stroke pediatrics. So it was a lot of work for me. But if you have just maybe you are really an internal medicine person and that's you know that that's all you can do, you're going to have to write a personal statement to say why you're interested in internal medicine. Where did it come from? How committed are you towards the internal medicine and all of that? So if you have more of, like for me, it was easier because I was applying family med, so it was okay to have pediatrics on my CV, it was okay to have ONG, it was okay to have internal med, it was okay to have anything at all, right? If you're applying internal medicine, for example, and maybe all this way I've been working in a pediatric hospital and that's all you're putting on your CV, it becomes questionable to say whether you're really committed to internal medicine. So your CV is just one CV, even if you decide to apply to 10 specialties. So that's another thing you need to start thinking about from the beginning. So when you are done putting that together, I think the program starts seeing your application around, for every year there are dates. So they'll tell you when the application cycle is open and programs are able to see your application. So the hospitals or programs you apply to are dependent on you and how much you can afford. Yes, so you would apply there and then they start interviewing, sending out interview applications. So every program or every hospital will start reviewing applications on a certain date. Most international medical graduates try to submit the application before that date because they review on a first come, first serve basis and then send out interviews. And then you start interviewing when, like in October. So they start sending out your interview invites from October and start interviewing. You choose the date you want to interview and then you prepare for these interviews with other people who are also practicing for the same thing. So you have to also prepare for interviews as well because interview skills are really important. So that's the second stage. After the interviews, so interviews are usually from October to end of January for most people. After you are done, say you have 5 interviews or you have 10 interviews, you rank the interview, you rank the programs that you interviewed. So you're interviewed in FMC Kefi, National Hospital, a couple of places around Abuja, and then I arrange them in my order of my preference from the highest to the lowest. So the NRMP is the National Residence Match Program, I believe. They use an algorithm to match you to the program that wants you. So after interviewing, the programs will also rank the candidates. So the hospitals, for example, National Hospital interviewed 100 people for family medicine. They would rank all the people they have interviewed from the first to the least that they want. So if they have like their 20 top candidates that they want to be in the program, they'll rank them. The programs also, the candidates also rank the programs and then they try to match you to a program. It's a process I cannot really exactly explain, but they use an algorithm. So if you are lower down the list for a program and for all the programs you apply to, there's a likelihood that you may not match. If you are higher up the list for some programs, you may match at your first choice, you may match at your second choice, you may match at your third choice, depending on how the programs also like you and how you like the programs. I don't know how to explain. So, but usually it's said that the more interviews you have, the higher the chances of you matching, and the less that you have, the lower the chances in general. But people have had 1 interview, 2 interviews, 3 interviews, and still matched. And people have had 7 interviews and went on matched. So that's why I say I cannot completely explain it, but it's more or less dependent on how well the program viewed you as well. So it's usually really good to really do well on your interviews. So after the interviews, that's the NIMP and match process. When they do the rank order list and all of that, this happens in February. In a certain date in March, in the month of March, they release a match in a match email. That's like saying whether you matched or did not match. So they first release congratulations, you matched. Unfortunately, you did not match. And then if you matched, about 5 days after, they'll tell you where you match. So the program is finding out who matched in their programs. They don't know who matched there. They'll have their top choices and probably match program people from their lists, but they don't know who is coming to them, and you don't know where you are going to. So that day, I think the programs find out before we find out. So the applicants find out a little later, but the programs find out, I think, a couple of days earlier or something like that. And then depending on, so when you find out in March, the next thing is the visa sponsorship. So you have, based on the exams you write. So if you write only step 1 and step 2, you're eligible for a J1 visa sponsorship. And this is an exchange program. And some people don't know this when they start and just like go ahead to just write exams and all that. So the J1 visa sponsorship is an exchange program, more or less saying you are going to train. When you're done training, you come back and work for 2 years in your home country to fulfill a J1 waiver process. I'll just like touch on this briefly. And then the H1B is if you have step 1 and step 2 and step 3. This is more like the hospital is sponsoring you to come and work for them and all of that. They have all their peculiarities and all of that. So just bear in mind that J1 visas are available if you have step 1 and step 2. And then the H1B is if you have step 1, step 2, and step 3. And then if you're a green card holder, you really do not need a visa. So those are the stages in summary. The other things that may influence the match process are, like I said, step 3. If you have step 3, you probably would have more interviews than someone that has step 1 and step 2, because it means as an international medical graduate, you have passed through all the exams, and they are certain that you will not start training and struggle with step 3. So step 3 can be taken within your first year of residency training. My program gives you up to the first half of your second year. So you can take, so that's why you don't need to write step 3 to come into the US if you cannot. But if you can pay your way through, get a visa and come in, or however way, come into the US and write, it's very good, and it helps to improve your number of interviews. Other things that also affect your ability to come in are US clinical experience. If you're able to also come to the US to get an in-person US clinical experience, they rank it very highly. So it means that you have worked with a physician here that validates or recommends you. You're also able to get letters of recommendation from those people, most likely. So it improves your chances of getting more interviews and matching. Some people do virtual rotations from Nigeria, but apply to work with somebody remotely and pay for it. It's really very expensive, but definitely less expensive than traveling, paying the cost of flight tickets to come and work here in the US or observe someone here in the US. So, but if you're able to do that, that's also helpful. Year of graduation also affects your chances. So the farther you are from graduation, the more scrutiny you have, I would say. More scrutiny you have in terms of what you have been doing. Reason being, their medical students graduate May of every year, and then start residency training in July. There's no interim, nobody does. So except if you're not doing residency training, then you're planning to do something else. Or maybe you are taking a gap year to decide what you want to do with your life, then come back and apply. But they don't have this whole people staying 2 years after graduation, 2 years after graduation. They don't really understand why you are not doing anything, or you have not started training all these years. So it's good if you have clinical experience to back up what you have been doing for your time, or if you are being a resident in your home country, and all of that, that helps. I've seen people that are 10 years post-graduation, 15 years post-graduation and match. It's more work, I would say. It's definitely more work, because sometimes some programs use filters, and if someone is more than 5 or 6 years or 10 years, they filter out the application, and some people don't even get to review it and all that. But I've seen people that have had those like years of graduation, especially people that have done residency training in their home country, still match because they have shown commitment to specialty in the sense that they have even finished the residency training. Some particular programs actually even look out for people that have had residency training in their home country. If you have done residency and all of that, or done a PhD, or done something related to what you want to do. Your scores too are very important. For step 1 is pass or fail, but step 2 is scored. I would always encourage you to do the best you can in getting the best scores that you can to improve your chances of getting interviews, because they look at your scores, they look at your personal statements, your letters of recommendation, your everything. So they look at everything you have done And so it's not just a pass or fail or get 50% and move on kind of thing. People are actually trying to get the best scores that they can get to improve their application. Your network is also very important. You need to know, not that you need to, it's not if I know somebody here, I will automatically match here. So the program I matched in, I do not know anybody, and I didn't even know one person in the whole state that I matched in. But not to say that it's not important. So network is very important, because sometimes you have people in positions that can actually talk to their program directors. Program directors like the HOD or the program coordinators, to say, oh, I know this person, I've worked with this person back home. I believe that they're a good candidate. Can you take a look at the application? So the network you have doesn't automatically give you an interview process or assure you of matching. It just helps to improve your chances of probably getting interviewed. So most people try to start building. It's good to start building your network early and not just wait until when it's time to apply, because at that point in time, tons of people are reaching out to one Nigerian in one program, trying to say, please put in a word for me. And it's difficult. If I have someone coming from, maybe someone from Bingham, for example, or someone from my class applied, and then somebody reached out for me randomly from somewhere and say, please, I'm applying to your program. And sometimes it's not like I'm an intern, I just started. It's not as easy to talk to program leadership as opposed to say I'm in my third year, I have a better relationship with all of that. So the connections are really important. They can help to put in a word for you or talk to you for you where those kind of things are allowed. In some programs, they don't allow people to say, oh, please talk to, I need you to look at this person. Other people who are open to that. Sorry, let me see if my time is almost up. And then 3 more minutes. Okay, thank you so much. So I think then God's favor too is something that's also really important, because sometimes it's not just about all the work and all of that. Personally, I started this process in 2021, and I matched in 2024. I was very concerned about the costs. And so initially I was actually on the way to do the PLAB route, but I didn't get my IELTS results out early enough to apply for that year. So I decided to just look at the whole process here. Sorry, I'm still sharing, right? Yes. So, sorry, I can't see my screen anymore. So, but the next slide there is about the average cost implications.
Yes, we can see the cost implications.
Oh, you can. Oh, okay.
Well, 10,000 something dollars.
No, yeah. So please do not look at the total cost, because people ask me, oh, how much will it cost me to do this thing? And I can't tell you how much it will cost, because it's very variable. If you're able to travel to the US and get US clinical experience, it'll probably cost you more. I didn't do that. I wasn't able to do that. If you're able to write step 3, it will cost you more. I believe that if you want to pursue this pathway, you would most likely need support from people around you, because as of this point, I don't think that our salaries in Nigeria can really cover for it. So this was an average estimate. Some of these things change every other time. I don't know why it's moving. So, but just to give you an idea of how much this would probably cost in terms of how much it costs to train. Then let me see here. I think that's most of it, I would say. The next are just resources that you can use. I'm sorry. You can use to check. So do you have any questions? I know that's a lot.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dr. Nsikan. That was quite exhaustive. It took about 31 minutes, but I think it was worth it. Because I'm sure that we're just learning some of these things. for the first time, please, if you don't mind, at the end of the meeting, if you can share this slide on the group, on the general group, I'm sure some people will like to have it. I just have one question for now before we get to the end of the time when we take the question. So if someone comes up, if someone goes with a J1 visa, that's you have to have written step 1 and 2 and do all the other things, and then you get a J1 visa and go. If you pass your step 3, can you switch your visa to a H1B visa?
Right. You have to, so your if you've passed your step three has to be ready before, I think most people before the rank order list deadline. So if it's something you are considering doing, you should be preparing to write your step 3 at least before like January, the end of January, for programs to consider you, because it's more or less like what they consider in terms of when they are taking candidates and all that. Because most times you apply and then you have to ask people, like you have to email the programs you interviewed at, or even the programs you even all applied to say, oh, I have step 3. Some people just by even taking step 3 within the application process get more interviews. So, but once you have matched with that visa, and then you have to go through it till the end.
Okay. So even if you pass your step 3 in the US, you must come back to Nigeria before going back. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, so yeah, so no, that's a peculiarity. You don't have to come back. I've not seen, you don't know anybody that has come back. Most people finish and then
You can switch. Why there? That's what I'm asking.
Yeah, so some people are able to get jobs on a H1B. If you get a hospital that's willing to sponsor you on a H1B, you can get that. Some people do a J1 visa waiver period where they work in a suburban or rural area. They want you to work in an underserved area more or less. So if you fulfill that requirement here in Nigeria and the US, you can also do that for the 2-year period.
Okay.
Before like progressing to something else. So, but you must meet that 2-year requirement more or less.
Okay, I understand. So you can go with J1, finish, do something, get a waiver for 2 years to remain and do something else before, and in that period you pass your step 3 before you can now get a H1B visa.
No, the step 3 must be like you must pass your step 3 within the first year of your second year of your medical training.
Okay, I understand.
But passing your step 3 doesn't give you a H1B visa because you're already matched with a visa already. So.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much, Dr. Nsika. We appreciate the time and the research that you have put in to prepare this very well. Thank you so much. God bless you. I don't want to waste much time, so we'll go to the next speaker. Please, if you can, Dr. Nsika, hang around until the end so that we can take 1 or 2 questions before we call it a day. Thank you so much. Dr. Ruth is the next speaker. Dr. Ruth Okai Ine. It's good to see you, Ruth.
Hi, Chibuzo. Good to see you.
Don't
worry about pronouncing my surname. It's like everybody bites their tongue. So yes, don't worry.
I had to look up my book.
I know.
To be able to pronounce it. It's good to see you. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. Good evening.
It's been a long time. Wow.
I know. I was really shocked when you reached out. I was like, oh, okay. But yes, really nice to see you.
Yeah, thank you so much for making time to be here.
Thanks.
Yes. So Dr. Ruth is in Canada, and I believe you're doing a residency program.
Yeah.
Awesome. So your question is simple. How do I, as a Nigerian trained medical doctor, how do I break into Canada to do a residency training? So you can take it up from there.
Sure, thanks. I'm actually glad Ntikan went first because I feel like she covered a lot of things that I would also talk about, because Canada and US have a very similar pathway in terms of residency application. So I borrowed Ntikan's thought and I did a small note. So I'll also share my screen. Okay, how do I do this? Share. Okay, can everyone see my screen? I don't know.
Yes, we can see your
Okay,
screen.
thank you.
Yes, we can.
Thanks. So residency in Canada is essentially governed by a body called CARMS. It's a bit different. I think the US has the NRP program. And it's literally like a group of people and an algorithm system that regulates the residency match program in Canada. There's 4 phases in each cycle. There's an application phase, there's a file review phase, there's an interview phase, a ranking, and a match day. And then the cycle typically opens up from September to March. But then there's 2 iterations. So the first iteration opens up from September to March, during which you go to sort all these 5 phases. And then it opens up again for unmatched spots, sometime between March and April. When you apply for the first iteration, which opens up in September to March, there's spots that are designated for CMGs and for IMGs. So as an international medical graduate, you cannot apply to a Canadian medical graduate spot. And then when the unfilled spots come out in the second iteration, everybody is allowed to apply. I think there's just very few schools that require that you apply to a CMG or an IMG spot. It's basically like the same phases in the second iteration, and then after that, everything closes. So what would you require to apply for a residency program in Canada? You need to be a Canadian permanent resident or citizen, which pretty much sucks because it means that you can't really apply outside Nigeria if you're not a permanent resident of Canada. So I'll go through like a very small, going into like a very small detail on how to apply for a Canadian PR, or at least the way I did it. I applied for my PR in 2020. What I needed at the time was I needed to verify my medical diploma with the Medical Council of Canada. And it's almost essentially the same thing where it's done online. You open a profile with the Medical Council of Canada, and then you share you send them your diploma online through an email, and then they receive it. They let you know that they received it. And then they send it to ECFMG, who sends it to Bingham. Bingham verifies it, and then they send it back to ECFMG, who sends it back to the Medical Council of Canada. Essentially, without I know during COVID, there were these wait times, but recently I think that this would typically take a few weeks to get done. And then Medical Council of Canada alerts you and say, hey, we verified that you are a doctor in Nigeria and your certificate is equal to a medical doctor here in Canada. And then you open a profile with the IRCC, you open an immigration profile. You get asked a bunch of questions, and then you fill those things to the best of your knowledge. And then at the end of everything, they give you a score. Essentially, once you submit that score, you enter into a pool of people who have variable scores. When I applied, every 2 weeks, the IRCC would release a score and say, today, everyone who has a score of maybe 470 or above would be invited to apply for a permanent residency in Canada. And so at that time, you can either decide to accept it and say, okay, yes, I want to become a permanent resident in Canada, or decline. If you decline it, you go back into the pool, and then essentially you can decline it as many times as possible so far your score meets up to whatever they're releasing. Once you accept it, then you are now required to upload a certain number of documents. Your medical degree that has been verified needs to be uploaded. You also need a proof of work experience. Sorry, my son is talking in the background very fast. You also need a proof of work experience. Most people would say if you have a 4-year work experience, that's fine, or higher. But I think the higher your work experience, the higher your chances of getting a good score and getting selected. And then you also need IELTS, but general IELTS, not academic IELTS. And the higher your score in IELTS, and the higher your chances of getting invited to apply for a permanent residence status. And then the last thing you would need is a proof of fund. Every year they release an amount of money that either as a family or as an individual coming into Canada, you need to have in your bank account. You don't necessarily need to have that money for years or 6 months. You can always show oh, this person transferred this money to me as a proof, a gift deed or whatever. And so far the person who's looking at your profile knows that you have that money to come in, then they can approve your status, and then they give you a PR, they stamp your visa, and then you get a PR card when you come into Canada. essentially, that's just the gist about getting a PR. And so you don't need to be in Canada at the time you apply for residency. You can be anywhere in the world. They just need to know that you have a PR status at the time that you're applying for residency program, or you have a citizenship status, whatever it is. And then you'll need exams. There's 2 exams that Canada pretty much requires. The QE1 exam is a set of MCQ exam. At the time I took it, it used to be like this long 8-hour exam that was divided into 2 phases. But I think that things are changing and they're making it only an MCQ exam. That I think they're giving things that they recently just changed things. The new exam setting is starting in April. But when I took it, it was like 200 multiple choice questions over 4 hours, and then another 4 hours for short answer questions / ranking, rating issue. It was a bit confusing, but there was 2 portions to the exam. And then there's the NAC exam, which is an OSCE exam, essentially. We all did OSCE exams in Birmingham, so we're pretty very familiar with that. The other exam you need is IELTS or OET. I took IELTS because I was a bit more comfortable with taking it, but you can also take OET. A few schools would say you don't need to take IELTS, you don't need to take OET, just prove that your training was done in English. And basically, if you go to the World Medical Directory, when you check Bingham, it says that our training was done in English. So you can save that and put it as part of your application, just as proof that your training was done in English. You need a transcript. You can get your transcript directly sent to you from Bingham and upload it when you're applying, or you can ask Bingham to upload your transcript to the CAMS portal. I got my transcript from Bingham, so I didn't have to worry about them uploading it. And then you need a medical school performance record, like Itikan said, just saying like how your performance was in school. It's basically like this really long letter. Bingham has a really great template that they give, and Dr. Dankia and Dr. Issa were really helpful in helping me prepare mine. Other things you need are reference letters. When I was applying, I used reference letters from Nigeria, and I used some reference letters from Canada. Really, because there's this thing that people say that it's good to have your reference letters from your home country, but also having reference letters from Canada might prove that you have some form of Canadian clinical experience. I got letters from where I was doing house job, so don't burn bridges, essentially. I got letters from where I did NYSC, where I worked in Garki Hospital from NYSC literally till I left Nigeria. And I also got letters I got a letter from Dr. Ibi. Some of us know him. He worked in Garki. He was also like one of our lecturers in Bingham. So he was really kind in giving me a reference letter. You don't see the reference letters that whoever you ask for sends. So when you are applying, it's very important that you use your gut feeling and say, like, I'm very sure that this person will give me a very good reference letter, so I'm going to use them, versus I don't know the kind of reference letter this person is going to give me. I cannot really vouch that this person will give me a good reference letter, because it really tells a lot about your clinical skill, your clinical knowledge, and how you are as a doctor. So good reference letters, good thing. But if you're not sure, I would say like get them, but you don't necessarily have to use them when applying. You also need a CV. There's a lot of things that go into your CV that I can touch on here that I feel like would help if you ever want to apply into residency in Canada. Aside your clinical experience, there's a lot of emphasis on who you are outside medicine. And so when I was applying, I kind of used my story, because not everybody has the same story, but I had talked to a lot of people who had also applied and matched into residency. So some of the things that I put on my CV were I tried to do some research. I worked with a group of doctors who were doing research, and I was able to get like some publications with them. I got like 2 publications, so that I added those to my CV. Volunteering, I mean, like the little things that when I was preparing my CV, I had to take like a whole trip back to school and remember like some of the things that I did when I was in Bingham. Literally like the small things, whether you headed a football team or you were captain captain of a football team, that stands out to your leadership skills. Whether you helped to decorate the hall during Christmas meetings, stands out as you. I mean, like you are a teamwork, you are a team player. Whether you, I don't know, CMDA, outreaches, like all those things, those were things that I pretty much added to my CV to give like a really good look. I also did some volunteering here in Canada that I added. But I feel like most of my experience really from like volunteering, leadership skills, team playing skills came from like my background in Nigeria. So I added them. And then you also need personal letters based on school's requirements. Now, I think that the one thing I forgot to say at the beginning of this is that in Canada, every hospital that offers a residency program is linked to a school, is linked to a university. So when you apply, you would see like, I matched the University of British Columbia, for example, but in British Columbia or under the University of British Columbia, there's like maybe 21 hospitals that offer a residency program. So when you apply to the university, and then when it comes to ranking, which I'll talk about later, you rank the hospital. So it's literally like one personal statement that British Columbia would say, right? And that makes it easy because certain hospitals might want certain things that they're looking for in potential residents. But I think that they kind of make it that one thing where everybody just writes a personal statement, the university goes through it, and everybody's happy with whatever you've written or determines whether your personal statement fits into what they're looking for. A few schools will require some pre-assessments depending on the program. There's some situational judgment tests, which don't test your medical knowledge, you just test what you would do if you are faced with a situation. So there's the FMPROC, there's CASPER, but these are typically taken when you are very sure you're applying to residency. You don't necessarily have to take them if you know, like, I'm not doing residency. And depending, like I apply to family medicine. If I'm applying to pediatrics, for example, I don't need some of the situational judgment tests. There's also mini mental interviews, which are very similar to situational judgment tests, but some schools are very particular about this because you require a good grade to get an interview with them. And these are usually done over like a Zoom platform where you go from like room to room and there's an interviewer in the background who asks you questions and you answer them of a situation that you're faced with. If you're applying to French schools in Canada, if you're very confident with your French skills, then you need translation of your documents, and then you also need to take a Canadian French exam to prove that you can speak French. There are approximately 18 medical schools. Honestly, I should have checked this up. I think approximately 18 medical schools in Canada, and each one has a quota for Canadian medical graduates and international medical graduates. And like I said, IMGs is anyone, and IMG is anyone who's schooled outside of Canada. And this would typically even include like Canadian citizens who didn't do med school in Canada. And then there's spots for every program that you can think of: family medicine, internal medicine, psychiatry, emerge, peds, obs, gynae, whatever you want to do. The highest spot, however, for family medicine, and you can apply to as many programs as possible. You don't need to like limit yourself, but I would say like if you're applying to many programs, then you need to really tailor your CV, because whoever is reading your CV in, let's say I apply to pediatrics, family medicine, and psychiatry, I need to tailor my CV to speak to whoever is reading that CV that says, oh, if it's a pediatrician, they're like, oh yeah, I really love that this person has pediatric skills. They don't want to be reading your CV and saying, why does this person have so much psychiatry skill and applying to pediatrics? Like that doesn't make any sense. So I applied for only family medicine, but I know people who have applied to so many programs that, and they match. Some people think it increases their chances of matching. So I don't know. The other thing I think I wanted to add was that, yeah, you can apply. So if I'm applying to University of British Columbia, I can apply to family medicine, internal medicine, gen surg, emergency medicine, whatever. I can apply to as many programs in that same school. Your application does not go across body. The family medicine does not know that I applied to 5 other programs. Internal medicine does not know I applied to other programs. It goes straight to the people who are reviewing your file. So don't cage yourself. If you feel like internal medicine is my thing, family medicine is my backup, apply, and apply certainly to like the same number of schools. It doesn't matter. Don't waste your money and apply to just one program in one school and another program in another school. It may not really yield a lot. So essentially, all of these things I said are done during application phase. Personally, when I did mine, I took my exams in February, the QE one in February. My NACOSKI was taken in March. I applied in September 2023. Yes, and I got my March result in 2024. And then the second phase is the file review phase. This is usually sometime between December and January. And during this time, interviews go out. Once file review closes, if you don't get an interview, then you're not likely going. In fact, you can think about doing the second iteration or applying another year. It's very hard to determine what criteria schools use to select who they offer interviews to, but there's a few schools that are very peculiar and would say we would give interviews to whoever has the first 300 people who have the highest scores based off their examinations. Other people would say, like, we look out for your year of graduation. If you graduated like a really long time ago, we don't want like older graduates, we want fresh graduates. Some other people look at your recency of practice, and recency of practice typically means that when was the last time you practiced medicine independently outside of Canada. And so if you practice medicine more than 3 years ago outside of Canada, then some people will say, like, go back to Nigeria and get some recency. But I don't know, there's people who've matched without, who've not practiced for years, and they were still able to match. Some people like a Canadian work experience. I said I did some observership, but aside from that, like, one of the things I also did was I also worked as a clinical assistant or physician's associate in Canada, which gave me insight into like what the practicing medicine in Canada looks like. Again, it's hard to tell, but there's tons of people who've matched with none of these, so it's not like a hard and fast rule. And then there's an interview period, and really what happens is you meet with your interviewers, you showcase yourself, you sell your markets, whatever you need to do. And then I think interviews are typically done between January and February. I had a friend who had an interview yesterday. So it's a period where all the schools will interview candidates, and then after that, interviews are over, and there's a ranking period. And like Isikan said, it tends to be it's a bit confusing. I can spend like a whole hour talking about how ranking works, but essentially I describe it like as a massive dating site. You rank the program ranks you. If you don't rank a program, sorry, I'm going to go back a bit. You rank a hospital. So when I was applying for residency, I applied to 7 universities. And in those 7 universities, there were like maybe up to 40 something hospitals that offered residency training. I only interviewed two programs, and in those 2 programs, there were like maybe 20 something hospitals. Each hospital is very peculiar in how their residency program is run. So some hospitals are very peculiar in the number of blocks you do in a certain rotation. Some others don't just want you to do as much family medicine clinic as you want to do. But every hospital is very specific. So what you rank this time is not the program, it's not the university. You rank the hospitals under that university. So the hospitals rank you rank the hospital. If you don't rank a hospital, you're not likely, you would not match in that hospital. If the hospital does not rank you, you will not match in that hospital. If all the hospitals you apply to, like Isikan says, rank you very low, then you're not likely to match. If you rank a hospital high, a hospital ranks you low. If all the spots are filled, then you're not likely to match. If you rank a hospital high, hospital ranks you high, you match into the hospital. Hospital ranks you high, you rank them low, the algorithm goes through your list, and if you don't match in any of the hospitals on the list above you, and obviously you're already high in that hospital, then you match into that hospital. So essentially, it's a very weird algorithm system that picks out how you match into the hospital that you'll do a residency in. But what they usually say is that it tries to make sure that you match at your topmost choice. And then match day, sometime, someday in March, where you find out if you've matched into residency. If you don't match into residency, then there's a bunch of unfilled spots that come up, especially because most Canadian medical graduates are very fortunate and they have a whole lot of spots for them that a lot of them go unfilled. So during this time, there's more of a competitive program where you do the same thing, do the whole 5 phases, but this time you only you're allowed to apply to Canadian spots. So it's more of a competitive thing. And then another match day comes and you find out if you've matched or not. There's a post-match period. And at this time, schools would usually contact applicants for unmatched positions, they give you an offer. So let's say a school still has like 20 unmatched spots and second iteration is done, then they would look at their list and say, oh, these people, because schools have access to, or hospitals have access to people who did not match, they can contact them and say, we know you didn't match, do you want to do residency with us? But CAMS has nothing to do with that. Residency starts July 1st. Some programs, some schools or some hospitals will offer an extension program before then. The number of years depend on the number of programs and what you matched into. It's a binding contract. So if you match into family medicine, I've seen people switch programs and say, I match into family medicine, but I want to do emergency medicine. You can switch sometime in residency, but it's a whole different thing on its own. Matched into family medicine again, it's 2 years. A lot of provinces are like states here, and they'll require like a return of service for international medical graduates, where essentially you may work in a small community for the number of years that you trained, or you still get paid as a family physician. I think that one of the things that is very lovely about family medicine here is how versatile it is. You can do anything with a family medicine residency training. If you decide that, oh, I want to do GP oncology, for example, you can always tailor like your training and your experience post-residency into like more oncology training. If you feel like you want to do a +1, you can do a +1 year post-residency in something like emergency medicine, and all you do is work as an emergency physician. If you want to do obstetrics, you can do a +1 in emergency. You can do advanced skills in dermatology, and all your patients will only be dermatology patients. So it's very broad, it's very wide, it's very versatile. You can really like tailor what you want. If you feel like I want to do like the whole scope and do clinic only, and then you can essentially just do clinic. If you feel like I like hospital and I want to see patients on the ward when they're admitted, that's what you can do. So yeah, that's pretty much my experience. And again, like Intikan said, there's a whole thing about God's favor. I feel like when I first got here, the one thing that a lot of people would say is it's very hard, it's very difficult. Canadian exams are very hard. Even if you pass, there's no guarantee that you would do anything with it. I feel like bad news travels. But then I had this friend who would always call me and be like, hey, when are we taking our exams? And every. And that really helped me in making sure that I stayed tailored. Like I was a bit more. I didn't want to make you feel like I was the person who was dragging her down when it came to like taking exams. So I sucked it up and I was like, yeah, I might as well just do it. But all I want to say is like, whoever you keep in your corner matters a lot. And bad news travels very fast. Like a lot of these things are very, very, very doable. And just really tailoring what you want to your experience and making sure that you keep your head, block the noise out. And I think that everyone is really able to do this with God on your side. So yeah, that's my story. And you can ask any questions if you have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ruth. Thank you so much. I mean, one of the things I've heard about, all this, among all the, let's say, pathways that we're discussing today, I think it's Canada that I've heard is the most difficult. But here you are.
I am.
As a testimony that, I mean, it's
That's
not
possible.
It's not impossible. It's very possible if you put your mind to it. And that's another thing. If I may veer for 30 seconds, that's another thing about the human spirit. If you believe something is possible and you put your mind to it, usually you get it accomplished. So thank you so much for your time. So I just want to clarify something before other people ask questions much later.
Sure.
From what you have listed, the only way you can get to write your exams and apply for residency training is for you to be a permanent resident in Canada.
No, you can take your exams without even being a permanent resident, right?
Okay.
Your first exams you can take anywhere in the world. It's virtual. You can take it from Nigeria, you can take it from anywhere in the world. You don't have to be in Canada. The second one, because it's an OSCE exam, you have to be here for it. So you can even come in on a visitor's visa, take it and leave. But I would say, like, if you want to do residency in Canada, then you have to be a PR. But honestly, Canada has so many pathways these days for people coming in who don't even do residency. I've heard of people who are doing like a practice ready assessment pathway where they come in. I'm not going to talk about that because that's a whole different conversation.
Yeah.
But essentially, if you have like a family medicine training in Nigeria and you're able to prove that you did a certain number of rotations, you can send it to them, they verify it, and then you use those same exams essentially to apply for a pathway where you're able to come in and practice straight up as a doctor in Canada. You don't even have to do a residency training. There's fellowship programs. There's a whole bunch of things that are changing these days because essentially they need doctors. If you are in the UK, for example, and you have proved that you have done your training, your GP training in the UK, I think you don't even have to take those exams. I think you just send them a message and then they say, okay, we verified that you've done like a UK training. And then essentially they are able to find a community that you can practice as a doctor and they straight up like you start working as a doctor. So it's that this is my pathway, but then there's like a whole other pathway that people go through. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's really possible. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
it is.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah, someone is asking whether they need an IELTS to get a PR. I think you mentioned that you need an IELTS to
You
apply
need
for a PR.
general, not academic. Yes,
Yeah.
you just need general. Yeah.
All right. Ruth, thank you so much. If you can, please hang around to the end, if you can.
Sure.
Thank you so much. God bless you. Because of time, I would like to move on to the next person that is on our list. And the next person on the list is none other than my friend himself, Dr. Achema Timothy. Dr. Timothy, I believe you're in the building.
Yes, I am.
All right, sir.
Okay.
Good to see you, brother.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. So we tasked Dr. Achema to, do a little investigation or research for us into the Australian pathway. And I know he's a very capable person and he has gotten some information for us. So, Dr. Achema, how do you think a Nigerian like myself, trained in Nigeria, can enter into the Australian medical space and maybe do a residency or something? Thank you. Take it off from there.
All right. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me issue a disclaimer. I'm not in Australia, but the process, thankfully, is really, really similar to that in the UK. What I've noticed is that Australia, UK, Canada, New Zealand, they have very, very similar pathways for immigration for international medical graduates. The US is just, of course, US being US, they're just in a world of their own. But I've noticed that, it's very easy to get around UK, Canada, New Zealand, and Australia if you've got, qualifications and experience in, any of these countries. And, they usually accept qualifications and experience amongst themselves. So that's one good thing. So to answer your question, to get into,
they're part of the
yes,
Commonwealth. So I guess that's what
yeah,
that's
part of the
what helps.
Commonwealth. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But they didn't include us. We're
exactly.
supposed to be part of the Commonwealth. Why is it difficult?
That's the thing now. We are all Commonwealth countries. All right. So, yeah, so to answer your question, how will a Nigerian trained doctor possibly still working and living in Nigeria or, who has undergone medical training in Nigeria and possibly living or working in another country that is not Australia, how can they get into, working in Australia and getting registered as a doctor in Australia? So basically, there are three pathways for an international medical graduate to gain registration with the Australian Medical Council, which is the AMC, and get to practice medicine in Australia. Some people could also divide it into four, but broadly there are about three pathways So I'll go with the first pathway, which is called the standard pathway. So the standard pathway is very, very similar to the plan pathway for UK immigration. So in the standard pathway, what happens there is that international medical graduates or IMGs would usually have to complete an AMC, that's an Australian Medical Council written exam, which is an MCQ exam. So sort of like your PLAB 1 exam. So you have to do that. And then there's a second part of an exam that you have to write, which is also a clinical exam. You could liken that to your PLAB 2 exam. So there's a written part, which is an MCQ exam. It consists of about 150 questions. And then the second part is the clinical exam. Now, fortunately, after writing the AMC written exam, that's the MCQ exam, you can choose to either do the clinical exam or a workplace-based assessment of clinical skills. All right. So what happens is that for you to, gain that sort of provisional registration, you can choose to do the MCQ exam and do the clinical exam. If you get that, you get provisional registration. Or after you've written the MCQ exam, you can choose to do a workplace-based assessment of your clinical skills instead of a clinical exam, which is like an OSCE exam. The only problem is that for the workplace-based assessment, you would have to do it in a workplace in Australia. So you'd essentially have to like get a job there and then be assigned to a supervisor who is going to look at your work and assess your clinical skills and your competencies as practicing as a doctor. Now, if their assessment is favorable, then they can recommend you to the Australian Medical Council or the AMC that they feel that you are capable of working as a doctor here, and then you can get that registration from the AMC. If you're not able to do that, like I said, you can just do the clinical exam, the OSCE. Now, the thing about the this standard pathway is that it just doesn't stop there. So after doing the MCQ and or the clinical exam and the workplace-based assessment, um, you can get a job in Australia, but then you have to undergo about 12 months of specified supervised practice. So it's sort of like a provisional, registration, the same way that we get to practice after, graduating MDC, and you have to do your house job for about a year and then you get full registration. So that's about the same thing. So after doing those ones, you have to do 12 months of practice, and then after that, you get like a full registration. So to be eligible for the standard pathway, of course, you have to have your medical degree has to be one that is recognized by the Australian Medical Council and the World Directory of Medical Schools. Fortunately, Bingham is an institution recognized by these, institutions. And then just to give us a breakdown of the fees. So for the AMC portfolio application fees is about 642 Australian dollars, which translates to about 613,000 naira. The MCQ fees is about 3,027 Australian dollars, which translates to about 2.8 million. And then the clinical exam, fortunately, the clinical exam can be taken online or in person. So there's a way they can, schedule the exam. You can take the clinical exam online or you can schedule it in person. The in-person one, of course, has to be done at the AMC exam test center, which is in Melbourne in Australia. So you have to travel all the way to Australia to do that. But if you've got very good internet connection, you've got, very good laptops and capabilities, and if they feel that's okay, your workplace or your your tech setup is valid enough for an online exam, you can choose to take the clinical exam online instead if you cannot travel to Australia to do the in-person one. The only thing is that the online exam costs a bit more than the in-person one. So the online one costs about 4,391 Australian dollars, about 4.1 million naira, while the in-person one costs about 3,991 Australian dollars, which is about 3.8 million naira. And then, of course, if you choose to do the workplace-based assessments, that also costs about 1,070 Australian dollars, which is about 1 million naira. So the first part of the exam, of course, can be taken is taken online. That's the MCQ part, and is available at Pearson VUE test centers. Pearson VUE is just one of these test bodies that conducts exams for some of these institutions. So there's one in Lagos. I don't know if there is in Abuja. I think there should be, but there's one definitely in Lagos. So you can take that in Lagos. So that's that for the standard pathway. So that is the one that most doctors would, end up taking. But if you are a specialist, all right, so if you are somebody that is already doing specialist training, wherever you are, possibly in Nigeria or some other place, the second pathway is a specialist pathway. All right, specialist pathway. Now, the specialist pathway can be divided into 4 types. All right, there is the expedited specialist pathway. Now, this is for IMGs who have international specialist medical qualifications that have been recognized by the Australian Medical Council's board and accepted as a recognized qualification. So, unfortunately, I do not think that, I don't know, I'm not sure, but I wouldn't be so, far from the truth to say that I don't think any of our specialist qualifications from Nigeria may be accepted by the specialists, board in Australia. So, but for people who have trained in some places like the UK or New Zealand or the US or even some places, and even some countries like South Africa, I know South Africa, some qualifications from South Africa are usually accepted in some of these places. This is a fast track pathway to specialist registration. So if you have that specialist qualification, you can just apply to the board and then they get, you get added to the AMC's board and you'll be registered to practice, as well as even getting on their specialist registration list for Australia. So that's the first part of the specialist pathway, sorry. Then the second type of specialist pathway is specialist recognition. So specialist recognition of the specialist pathway. Now, in this situation, if you have an international specialist medical qualification, but that qualification is not on the Australian Medical Council's board's expedited specialist pathway, so it's not recognized, but you have that international specialist medical qualification, then what you can do is that you can apply to the specific medical college that you have that specialist qualification in. So if, for example, you are a consultant in, say, O&G in Nigeria, all right, and that qualification, whether it's the FMCOG or the qualification of the National Medical College in Nigeria, if it's not acceptable in Australia in their specialist board, you can apply to the O&G specialist college in Australia and say, okay, look, I'm trying to apply for specialist registration. This is the qualification I have. So what they will now do is that they will compare your qualification side by side with their own qualification and then see if your level of training is up to par with the training that they offer. So it's like they'll do like a comparability assessment. And if they feel that, okay, it is acceptable, the standard is the same, then they would recommend you for specialist recognition. And then you can now get, registered with the AMC board and granted license to practice. So that is the second part. So like the difference between this and the first one, which is the expedited one, is that because the board already recognizes that international qualification, once you apply, you are giving it straight. There's no side-by-side comparison because they've already done that and they know that your training was of their standard. Now, the third type of the specialist pathway qualification is a specialist pathway for an area in need. So now this is also for IMGs who have an international specialist medical qualification that is not recognized by their board, but you wish to work in an area of need. Now, because Australia, sort of like Canada, is very, very big, and they have different regions and counties and boards. Some of those places are very, very autonomous in their practice and their assessment. So what you can do is that if you have seen a place that needs specialists like you, because they might not, afford to, cherry pick who they want, they might be able to take you even though your qualification is not accepted in their own specialists, qualifications board. All right. So they can choose to take you to work to just fill in that gap in that area of need. Now, the only problem is that this one does not lead to specialist registration. So essentially, you just work there, but you will not get specialist registration because it is not recognized. But you are just, employed to fulfill or to just fill in that area of need. Now, the fourth type of the specialist pathway is called the short-term training pathway. Now, this is for IMGs, of course, who have an international specialist medical qualification, or they are a specialist in training, they're undergoing residency training wherever they are, and then they want to undertake up to 24 months of specialist or advanced training in Australia. So you just come in, work for about 24 months in that area in which you are already training, wherever you are, or you have undergone training, work for 24 months and possibly leave. Again, this does not lead to specialist registration. So it's just like a short-term gap, thing. So that's that about the specialist pathway. Now, the third pathway for immigration for IMGs is called the competent authority pathway. Now, this is a pathway that is very, very common with doctors who have possibly taken the PLAB route or some other routes and are practicing in the UK, and then they make the switch and move over to Australia from the UK. Now, the competent authority pathway is for IMGs who may be non-specialists or maybe GPs who are already qualified in some other countries, and they can get registration to practice as doctors in Australia. Now, to be eligible for this pathway, you must have been assessed by what they call a competent authority, and you must have practiced in a competent authority country. So a competent authority country is a country that, has this or has been recognized by Australia that their level of practice and their training, methods are on par with what they offer in Australia. And so if you have trained in these countries or you have practiced as a doctor in this country, they can agree that your level of practice is up to what they offer in their own country. And so they can take you in without you having to write the AMC exams, the MCQ and the oral exams and all of that. So you can bypass that exam because you must have been found competent in practicing in those competent authority pathways. Now, of course, for you to practice in these countries that are recognized as competent authority countries, you must have written their own exams. So if you're in the UK now, you must have written PLAB or written membership exams for the UK or some other, exams to, practice in the UK. All right. So these are the competent authorities that are approved by the Australian Medical Council. So you have the GMC, which is the Medical Council for the UK. You have the Medical Council of Canada, the LMCC. You have the USMLE. You have the Medical Council of New Zealand. You have the Medical Council of Ireland, and you have the National Board of Osteopathic Medical Examiners in the USA. So these are competent authorities that have been approved by the Australian Medical Council. So if you have been assessed and you have registration with these countries or these councils, then you can bypass the exams for Australia and go to practice in Australia. Now, the only thing is that it's not just about registering in these countries. You must also have practiced medicine in these countries for at least 12 months, all right, of supervised practice before you can also be eligible for this pathway. So it's not just gaining, registration with these countries. You must have practiced in those countries for at least 12 months. So at least a year, and then you can now apply for registration in these countries. So now, of course, depending on the countries, they have different eligibility requirements. Like we know, the PLAB has its own requirements, Canada has its own, United States have their own, New Zealand have their own. So each of those, countries have their own eligibility requirements like that. So of course, when you do that, then you can bypass the AMC, MCQ, and clinical exams and practice there. All right. So now, additionally, um, after respect of these other pathways, to also practice in Australia, you need to have passed an approved English language test. So IELTS academic is one of them, or the OET is also acceptable. The TOEFL exam is also acceptable. Then there's this one that is also offered by Pearson called the PTE Academic English Exam that is also acceptable. Then, of course, if you have already successfully completed registration in New Zealand or the UK, you can bypass the English language exam requirements because these other places would have required you to have taken these exams at some points. So if you have PLAB registration, it means that you don't have to do the English language exam again. You can just bypass that. All right. So that's that for gaining registration for Australia. Now the peculiar thing with Australia is that for example, like the standard pathways, if you do that, you still have to work for like 12 months under supervision. After then, we now get like a full, registration, and then you can practice fully as a doctor. So it's like you have been under probation for about 12 months where they assess you before you can now work fully as a doctor. Unlike, the UK, where after your PLAB exams, you can take up full doctor roles. Of course, you'll be under supervision, but, there is really you're not under provisional registration, unlike Australia. So that's just that for practicing there. Now, the good thing about Australia is that um, even after just writing the first part, like if you choose to do the standard pathway, for example, where you have to do the MCQ exam and the oral exam or the clinical exam, sorry, or a workplace-based assessment, after you have taken the MCQ exam and passed it, you can actually get a job and then start working before you take the other part of the exam. For example, if you want to do the workplace-based assessment, now of course you have to have a job first. So you can actually take the MCQ and then look for a job, get a job, and then start working and then take the other parts of the assessment and complete your registration. So that's the good thing about Australia, unlike the UK, where to practice as a doctor, if you choose to do the PLAB route, you have to do PLAB 1 and PLAB 2 before you can get any job at all. So that's one of the differences between Australia and the UK. So for medical residency in Australia, the process is different also for Australia. Of course, after you have gained registration with the AMC. Additionally, you must also be registered with the Australian Health Practitioners Regulation Agency, AHPRR. So it's just like their own board that is responsible for residency training. So what happens there is that you look for the program that you're interested in, the residency program you're interested in, and then of course you consider the location, the area that matches your interests, program duration requirements, and all of that. You submit an application to the AHPRA, and then after that, you can submit your application directly to the program. So, of course, in the AHPRA website, there's a list of the hospitals that offer residency training, sports, and programs, and the number of programs that they offer, and the number of slots they have, and all of that. So you can apply directly to the program themselves, or you can just apply through the application service of the Australian Medical Council itself. Then after that, after your application, there's a selection process. This might include an interview, a review of your application, supporting documents. Some might even choose to do a clinical exam or an assessment. Depends on the institution, the training place, and what they want. Different places have different requirements. Some might not need an interview, some might not need to assess you clinically again. So after that, of course, if they feel you're okay, you'll be offered a position in the program, and then if they require any additional documentation from you, they might request that, and then you can start your residency training program. All right, and then after that, of course, you have to apply for visas, make sure they give you a sponsorship, apply for visas, and then you can now come. So of course, all of these things would involve some level of expenses, visa fees, and all of that. So in a nutshell, this is what it takes to emigrate to Australia for as a Nigerian trained doctor. Australia is not, of course, for us Nigerian doctors. Most of us are going to the UK or the US. Australia doesn't seem to, be one of those places that people will first go to straight from Nigeria. So a lot of doctors who are working, Nigerian doctors who are working in Australia, probably move there from the UK or from Canada. Very, very few Nigerians actually make the jump straight from Nigeria to Australia. I'm not saying it's not possible, but it is very, very possible. And these are the steps that you need. Australia is also a place that is up and coming in terms of interest for Nigerian doctors. A lot of Nigerian doctors are doing what they call Jackpot 2.0 from the UK to Australia, because the UK is seemingly looking saturated, and opportunities as well as financial remuneration is not as good as it used to be. Australia is a place that is big, is larger than the UK, and so the population is growing, and the centers are very, very far, and fast, sparsely spaced, and because of that they need a lot of doctors. So it's a place that right now they are really, really actively recruiting, and there are a lot of opportunities that are open for doctors. So if you feel that the UK is delaying you, or it doesn't seem to be working for you, Australia is a place that you can very seriously consider. In terms of the pay, it is far, far. A lot of doctors, the remuneration is far better than what you get in the UK. So that's that. Thank you very, very much for listening. Welcome questions, suggestions.
Thank you so much, Dr. Achema. That's awesome. Thank you so much for that very detailed expose. I think there are many Nigerian doctors that are moving to Australia. I know a couple of people that have gone there, and I'm even just hearing that one of us, I think Dr. Obia also, I'm just getting information that he's in Australia. So that's awesome. Yes, and I've heard that Japa 2.0. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
So just to confirm, you mentioned that one can write both parts of the Australian exam from Nigeria. The first one being an online like MCQ, and the other being a clinical exam.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. And to also confirm, sorry. So also confirm, you said that one can write the first part of the exam, and if possible, get a job in Australia that takes them there, where they will supervise for a while, and then get a permanent job for another supervision for another 12 months before getting in.
Yes.
Okay, that's awesome.
Yes.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for doing the research. Thank you for presenting it. I want to quickly take the last person. Like I said, Dr. Sarah Ryan cannot be physically with us, but I had a session with her, so I want to share that video for us to watch and listen to. So let me share my screen very quickly. Okay. So thank you, Sarah, for joining us today. It's good to have you. It's good to have you on the discussion.
It's good to be here.
Yeah. So basically, your question is simple and straightforward, right?
Yeah.
How can I, as a Nigerian trained medical doctor, right, emigrate to the United States of America without having to come for a residency program or writing a USMLE, because we want to know what our options are, because basically the way we see most Nigerians going to the US is they have to, write the USMLE, then they have to apply for matching and all that and all that. And until they are matched, they can't come. But what are the options that we have as IMGs, as internationally trained medical graduates, apart from, of course, a residency pathway?
Okay. Yeah, thank you for that question. Many people who come from Nigeria to the United States, or would I say many international medical graduates who come to the US to pursue other things, the major route through which they come is through school. So what many people do is they're done with their medical school back in Nigeria, done house job, NYC. Many of them might decide to come in straight for a PhD. For those who feel like the PhD is too long, they would decide or opt for a master's degree. So of course, the usual route of looking for admission and all of that. And then for the most part, because of your medical degree, getting an admission, especially in the medical line or in a course that is like really medically inclined, is usually very easy, I would say, because speaking from my experience and in my school, many people who have like a medical background is almost automatic, like you will get the admission almost automatically. But I mean, if you fumble during the interviews, I mean, that's like entirely up to you. But from that first instance of submitting an application, most times if you have a medical degree, your chances of being admitted is very high. If you ace the interview, that's like, yeah, really good. So your medical degree gives you like an edge when you're applying for like a master's or a PhD in overall in any medical course or any medical postgraduate study, for example. So that's what I mean. So people just apply for a master's, apply for a PhD, and then when they come in, they finish the program and they begin to apply for jobs. Now, if you come to do like a master's or PhD, at the end of your program, there's something called OPT, optional practicum training or something like that. Yeah. So during that period, you have the opportunity to work for an organization or an institution, whatever kind of organization you find. In many schools, they have international student offices that would give you more guidance about this. But so many people have the opportunity to do the OPT, and then the OPT can be extended, I think, up to 2 years, if I'm not mistaken. So within those 2 years, the expectation is that you might find a job that would, maybe a full-time job now, for example, that would like sponsor you to get a work visa, or you can maybe decide to write the exams, the USMLE exams, and then start residency. Or at that time, the 2 years you expected to get maybe your green card. So that's what many people do. I know quite a number of doctors who have come in with masters, and during the course of doing the masters and the OPT, they had time to like sit for the USMLE and then write the USMLE, and then as soon as they're done, OPT and all of that, they start residency. Some other people have come. I know somebody as well who has come, did masters here, but he tried to write the exam, the USMLE exam. It wasn't really working for him at that time, so he registered for a PhD. During the course of the PhD, fortunately, he was able to pass, I think, step 1 and step 2. And once he was done with his PhD, he defended the very next month, he started his residency. So people use the masters and the PhD or school routes basically just to, I won't say pastime, but they want to just maybe gain more knowledge and be here while they're preparing for the USMLE. Some other people, when they come here, they're done with the masters and the PhD, they find that they're not really keen on doing the residency anymore. They just get a job in whatever industry, whatever field they have studied in their masters or the PhD, and then just continue their lives like that. So that's the route. I feel like that's the major route many people take. I mean, I don't know if this really matters for some people, especially for, would I say, women who have spouses that are here. It would be so easy for them to come in through, I think, the spousal green card. I don't know the intricacies, but I know people who are medical doctors still from Nigeria whose spouses were here and then they got married and the spouses were able to file for the green card, whatever, and then they're able to come in. It's not automatic. Even if your spouse is here, it's not an automatic thing, but it's also an option. People do it. So these are like the major routes. I think the biggest route is through school. That's like what many people do. Yeah, through school, either masters or a PhD. And even when you go to the embassy, and then they ask you, oh, what are you doing in Nigeria, blah, 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 and then you say you're a doctor. I feel like people get denied here, but from my own limited understanding and experience, I feel like it's a lot easier compared to those who are not medical doctors. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but that's just how I interpret it because of the discussions I've had with other people who are doctors in Nigeria who have come in and, their experiences basically. There are so many doctors here, like so many doctors. My school is essentially a medical school. Like we don't have any undergraduates, and even the graduate studies are purely medical. There's nothing, no social sciences, no arts, nothing is all medical. So I interface with so many doctors from Nigeria who are doing I don't even know anyone who is doing masters. The only person, somebody came and did masters, but many of them are doing PhD. In fact, there's one who came recently doing a PhD in reproductive medicine, interested in IVF and all of those things. Yeah, so that's what many of them do. School, basically, is what brings people here if they're not really interested in pursuing the USMLE. Or some who have interest in doing USMLE, but they feel like if they're here, it will be, put them in the mood to study and all of that. And then they come, do the master's, PhD, and then write the exam and continue with their lives. Some others, this is the plan, but when they come here, they realize that there are so many other options available outside of doing residency. Yeah, they do the master's, PhD, and then just find a job to do. This guy who came to do reproductive medicine. He's an elderly person. I respect him a lot because of the interaction I've had with him. He's quite knowledgeable. He has worked as a doctor in Nigeria, in Lagos specifically. He's done so many things. And then he's like, he wants to change a bit. And he's saying like reproductive medicine is where he wants to be right now. And he's coming to do a whole PhD in reproductive medicine. Yeah, so that's what many of them are doing right now.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's awesome. So school is the major other route apart from coming to, yeah. So when people come for school, right? How easy is it for them to get a job to support themselves while doing maybe a master's or a PhD? Is it possible?
Okay, I'll start with the PhD. So with the PhD, majority of the PhD, especially STEM, like STEM related PhDs, will give you a stipend. Most times it's like depending on the school, depending on the money they have, depending on the funding, depending on the location and all of that, I factor all of these into the calculations that they make to determine how much the stipend will be for the month. So, but most schools, when you come to do a PhD in STEM, you'll be given a stipend. And then that stipend, I mean, if it's you, wife, and maybe if you decide to come with your family, then that's, I don't know, it depends on how big your family is. If you have a very big family, it might not be enough. But for some people who come just by themselves and their spouses, it's more than enough. The city where I am is not a very expensive city. Like cost of living is not too high. So the stipend is just okay. And when I came, I was all by myself. Like, so it was even more than enough when I came. Yeah. So it depends on where you go, but you get a stipend when you're doing PhD. That should cover at least rent, food, and transportation, all of that. And you may not necessarily have to work. Maybe your spouse can work, but most times, if you're coming with your family and they're coming as F2 dependents, because you would have an F1 if you're the students, then your dependents will have an F2 visa. You're not expected to work if you have F2, but some people find like, side jobs that they are able to do. Some who have skills can actually be in their houses and use their skills like making hair, sewing, cooking for other people and all of that. So people do that. So they make extra money from that. Then for masters, there's no much funding for masters compared to PhDs. So people would get master's degree. Some people are lucky enough to get like a graduate research assistantship or graduate teaching assistantship, where most times this assistantship will cover your tuition and maybe give you some kind of stipend. Many people who do masters that I know of, sometimes they do like some side things, which is not technically legal, but they find a way to go around it, just to make extra money. So people are able to find a way around it. I know a family here who the man is my friend. Yeah, okay. So everything I'm saying or everything I've been referring to essentially is like my experience and the experience of those around me. So I'm just speaking a lot to the experiences of people I have interacted with and my own experience. So when you come, the expectation as a PhD student, they give you like health insurance. They expect that when you come with your family, every member of your family who is here should also be enrolled in the health insurance. But the problem is if they enroll every member of your family, they take out like from your gross pay, for the health insurance. So if you have many people on your health insurance, it means that at the end of the day, your net pay will not be as much. So what many people do, which I only even found out recently, is they come with their families, of course, but then there are so many free clinics here that they explore. The federal government has like free clinics that are funded, of course, by the federal government, where people can actually access health. The only issue is that, wait times are very long because it's free. So the people, so this my friend has come with his family, his wife and 2 kids. He is the only one who receives like the health insurance from school, and then his kids and his wife, just use the free clinic if they really need to see a doctor. Yeah. So there's always a way to get around all of these things. Yeah. So like I was saying, the major route is actually through school. And then the beauty of it is that if you come to do like a master's, I think a PhD, during the course of your program as a PhD student, there's something called the National Interest Waiver Program. So the American government is seeing you as somebody who is going to contribute significantly to their society. So they waive off certain labor laws and all of that, and you can do a special kind of application. During that application, you're going to get a green card at the end of it. So it takes some time, but it's an opportunity that many people use. So people come in during the course of the PhD, maybe after the first 2 years of their PhD, they start the application. It takes some time to do. So they apply for, we call it NIW. So you just apply for the NIW, the National Interest Waiver Visa, something. I don't know all of the name, but you get a green card at the end. So you start the application. There are 2 steps. The first step is a whole bunch of documentation. Many people use a lawyer because, it's immigration law, is a lot. Like all the documents you need to put together is actually bulky. So people use a lawyer, pay lawyers to do all of that for them. And they put in the first step of the application. If it is approved by the United States Customs something, USCIS, that's what it's called, yeah. If they approve that, then you can now apply for a green card. That whole application too, the lawyer helps with that, puts in the application, and then you submit it. Once that's approved, you get a green card. Now, with a green card, you can do everything. So you don't have limitations to the kind of jobs you can apply to, because there are some jobs that you apply to and they will tell you this job specifically is only for a citizen or a green card holder or a permanent legal resident. So with your green card, you qualify for all of that. There are no limits to the jobs you can apply for. So everybody I know who is from Nigeria doing the PhD applied or is in the process of applying for the NIW / green card at the end. So I don't know anybody who is doing a PhD right now who has not started or plans to or is not applying. So that's what people do. So many people, when they now get the green card, they explore other things, even things outside of medicine. They do, now you can have businesses, you can do anything you want to do. The major difference is, of course, you might not be able to vote, especially in federal elections, but certain local elections, you can even still vote. So it gives you a lot of advantage. You're not really at the losing end. It's just that the process of doing it can take some time, maybe 2 years sometimes. That's why they advise people to begin early, and it can be expensive, but I think it's worth it at the end of it. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. The final thing I'll ask you to clarify, I know I once asked you this and you told me, but I think it's important to state it here in this discussion. Can you hear me?
It's a bit low. Let me see, am I supposed to?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, now, yeah, I can hear you.
Okay. I once asked you this and you told me, I think it was a private discussion, but I think it's important to state it here because I remember you told me that as a medical doctor, you can apply directly for a PhD, not going through a degree in the US. Can you just the next 1-2 minutes and elaborate on it?
Oh yeah, like I was saying before, once you put in an application, and of course your primary degree is like the medical degree. The people who are looking at these applications, they're like, okay, if this person can go through medical school, then this person should be able to go through the rigors of doing a PhD. And even in the requirements for the school, you would see that many schools would just say, just have like a bachelor's degree. Fine, there's so many people who have bachelor degrees and then they would apply, they might not necessarily be considered. But I feel like having a medical degree just gives you an extra edge, even though it's not like having a master's is not really a requirement to apply, but just having that medical degree. Many people there are doctors who I've interacted with, even from Uganda, who have come to do this program and have finished and are doing other things. And he shared the same sentiment with me. It's like he believes it's because of his degree, because there are other people who applied with him from Uganda and they were not even called for the interview at all. Yeah, so, and you actually don't have to have a master's degree to apply for many, not all, but many PhDs in the United States. You don't have to have a master's degree. Just have your bachelor's degree, and some schools might require you to do like an evaluation of your degree to put it on the same level with the American, standard. So if you do that and it's good enough, by all means, you can apply directly. You really don't have to have a master's degree. Many people opt for master's, of course, it's shorter. Commitment is not as much as PhD, but yeah, whatever you decide is fine. But at the end of the day, you really don't have to have a master's degree to apply for a PhD. If you go through the schools you're interested in applying to, you would look at the requirements and you just follow that. Many schools don't have that requirement for masters.
Thank you so much, Sarah. So basically,
Yeah.
if I'm to in a few sentences, what you've said that most people who are coming to the US as doctors and don't want to go through the medical residency pathway, USMLE, etc., they can look for schools, apply for a master's or a PhD. Then when you get there, as you're doing your PhD, for instance, you can now apply for a green card,
Yeah.
and that you will get it. Okay, and also, even as a doctor, you can apply directly for a PhD, of course, because PhD also will be you applying for a longer stay. As a master's,
Exactly. That's why many people just apply for a PhD. Like my friend Olaiton, who is actually doing residency now, he actually came in through masters. He did the masters and then he realized that the time for masters, it was just 1 year. It wasn't enough for him to do the USMLE, finish the masters and all of that. Immediately he realized that he applied for a PhD. And then that kept him. In fact, during the course of the PhD, after he was done with his coursework, he was supposed to start like his dissertation work. He took some time off, 1 year. And that was when he actually did his exams. And then came back after the 1 year, did his dissertation. And then as soon as he finished his dissertation, I'm telling you, he defended in April last year, May. I think he started his residency.
that's
Yeah,
awesome.
so many people, opt for the PhD because of the longer time. And the beauty of the PhD also, apart from generally, they will expect you to finish within a certain time. The US is generous with the number of years that you have to finish. When they're giving you the admission, you can see 7 years, like you have 7 years to finish the program. So if you really want to drag it and, just enjoy the benefits of the PhD while working on your own personal things, you can actually drag it for that long and finish all you want. But, many of us Nigerians, we don't want to be in one place. We want it forever. So we just do that in a hurry. And that was like the wisdom he did. He said if he had known, he would have just applied directly for the PhD, but it doesn't matter. It worked out for him. So, yeah, many people just opt for the PhD because of the longer stay.
So Google is your friend. You
Yeah.
look for the schools that offer this PhD and apply, and good luck, right?
Yeah. Yeah, people should
Thank
explore. Honestly, if you're coming, I don't know how it is for like resident doctors with the whole green card thing, but if it's an opportunity, if it's there for doctors, I believe there's something. I don't know. I don't want to say something I'm not very sure of, but doctors who are coming in to do like residency, they should also explore the NIW thing. I believe they would qualify because I mean the US they're always looking for doctors, so they should also explore it. I know the NIW, like a lot of PhD people do it. A lot of PhD people do it, and then after that, they do many other things after they get the green card. And if you get your green card through this route, within 5 years, you can actually go ahead to apply to become a citizen. Yeah, so that's what people do. So, but doctors should also explore. If you're coming to do your residency, look into it if it's an opportunity so that you're starting and the number of years for your residency could probably count to you ultimately applying for to become a citizen. If that's available, yeah, I think it's something they should look into. I haven't looked at it before, but yeah.
Thank you so much, Sarah. Thank you, I
Yeah.
appreciate it, and your wisdom on this. I don't know. Maybe, well, I think that if we need more clarification, we can always reach you. Thank you
Oh
so
yeah,
much.
you can always share my email. Maybe let me send you my email address here. Anybody who has any more questions
Send it.
can send me an email. I respond very quickly to emails.
All right.
I don't like phone calls.
All right, Sarah Benedict,
Yeah.
2014, Thank you
Yeah.
so much. Thank you for your time. Have a wonderful rest of your day.
Yeah, thank you. Bye.
All right, so at this point, let's take one or two questions for our participants. I mean, if you have any question that must be asked this night, then please go ahead. If you have any question that you think must be asked this night, please go ahead and ask. All our participants are here. Dr. Nsikan is here. Dr. Ruth is here. Dr. Achema and Dr. Obani are all here. So I think I want to round this in the next 10 minutes. We should round up. We've taken more than about 2 hours now. And I'm so glad that each and every one of us is here. So if you have a question that you want to ask, kindly unmute yourself and ask, or if you put it on the chat box, I will read it. And then, all right. So, some of the questions I'm seeing here have already been answered. Do I need IELTS to get PR in Canada? Yes, you need IELTS. I don't know. Does anybody have a question? You can unmute yourself and ask a question if you have one.
Yeah, I see a question for me in the
Yes.
chat box.
Yes,
It
go
says,
ahead.
if you have surgery at heart, can one apply for internal medicine, match from Nigeria, then in your second year and at the end of the 4-year residency, apply for surgery match? Yeah, so I've heard that people do this as well. They do because surgical specialties are not as easy to match into straight up from Nigeria. So people have applied internal medicine and then when they're close to their residency training, applied for a match to restart another specialty. I've seen people that they're doing internal medicine and then not switch, it's not a switch, you have to reapply more or less, apply for anesthesiology or something else that was a bit more challenging to get into. So it's something that I've actually heard one or two people do. So yeah, I think that is doable. Other people come in and do a master's or do research or try to work their way around here, like Dr. Wood said, maybe get an experience that's to strengthen the application and try to match directly. But if it's something that is not feasible for you to do, I think that is possible to do.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nsikan. There's a question for Dr. Achema. There's a question for Dr. Achema in the chat box. Dr. Achema, if you can answer it, please go ahead. Okay, Dr. Achema.
Yeah, okay. Sorry, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, we can see you.
Okay. All right. All right. So the question was, let me just pull that up. Is there a specific period within the year when AMC1 exam? So I'm guessing the person means the first part of the exam, that's the MCQ exam. Is there a specific part of the year when it is um, conducted. All right. So the exam is conducted through, the person view exams and person view centers, and it is done online. So I know that there is a particular period, a scheduling period between um, February, from January to about um, no, sorry, from March, yeah, from February, March to about um, November, yeah. So from February or March to about November. So that is the scheduling period when the exams are conducted. So for this year, 2025, for example, now, um, the scheduling periods will close for that's for February exams to close like around the 20th of January. So there is an exam period in February, there is in March, April, May, June, all the way to November, like that. And then there are specific dates within each of these months when the exams will be conducted. So for example, for the February exam, that's for this year, there will be an exam on the 10th of February, on the 11th of February, 12th of February, 13th, 14th, and 15th. For March, there is an exam on 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. For April, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. So like sort of like almost like a week of exams within each month. So it provides a very um long period of scheduling where you can, you know, pick a month where you feel that you would have prepared enough and you can write. So from February to about November of each year, I would say.
All right, Dr. Chema.
All
Thank
right,
you.
thank you.
Thank you very much. I have a question for Dr. Ruth. Um, Dr. Ruth, um, Canadian
Yeah.
Canadian doctors are the best paid in the world. Yes or no?
I don't know. I don't know. I think the US pays doctors very good too. So, but they get paid well. I wouldn't lie. They get paid very, they get paid very well.
Dr.
Yeah.
Isika, do you agree? Because I think pay is a very important reason why people make decisions of where to go. Pay is important. The ability to also raise a family is also very important. So, which of these countries would you say may be best for a traditional Nigerian like me?
I really don't think that there's any, like these Western countries, I don't think there's anyone that feels traditional like Nigeria per se. Some places probably would be better to raise children than others, like maybe some provinces in Canada or some states in the US. But I don't really know. I don't know about the UK. Maybe the UK might be a little similar because there's more community, stronger Nigerian community in some parts of the UK. The UK generally compared to the US. The US has Nigerians in sections in different states that are better. Like my state doesn't really have those Nigerian communities, and also if you're looking for that Nigerian community and all, you might not find it in every place.
Okay.
That's about family. About pay, I don't know. I think it's relative. I think Canada pays well. The US too pays well. I think the pay is more when you finish. The pay is actually when you finish training. I don't know about in Canada, but training as pay as a resident is just for you to be comfortable. When you are done training, that's when the compensation comes in. Yes.
All right.
Yeah, I think I agree. Pay is as a resident, not so much because I honestly know like physicians assistants who earn way more than me.
Wow.
And yes, and like way more
Anymore.
than me. I was talking to one of them when I couldn't believe how much she was earning. I'm like, I'm a resident, and she's like, yeah. But I think pay you really start seeing when you leave residency. In terms of family, again, I think it depends. It depends on the hospital you match in. It's very variable. my hospital where I am is very understanding. I have a 3-year-old, and so they are very like understanding in terms of like what they give me, my call schedule, when I need to like take some time off. I think like I matched into a rural program. So in my second year, I'm supposed to have like 8 months where I do like a rural program. And they're like, no, you have a 3-year-old, we'll make you 4 months. So they're like, it depends on genuinely just if you get into a program that is toxic, then I don't know. But if you have like a really supportive program, then it makes a difference. And obviously, like Nancy said, like community very matters. I also matched into a place where I didn't know anybody. But like for some reason, I don't think that there's any time that I really needed help with something that someone has not offered to help me out with something. So yeah.
That's awesome.
I think that even for like ladies, if you're planning to train in the US and probably you're also planning to start a family, you should also bear in mind that we don't have I think the US probably is the worst in terms of maternity leave system. Here for residency training, you get only 6 weeks maternity leave. So yeah, it's ridiculous. So,
That's
but
terrible.
very terrible. So when I heard I think the UK gets, I don't know how many months, 9 months or how much
We get 1 year. We
one
get we
year,
get up to a year and a half, actually.
and you are being paid. Anything after 6 months here is like you are not going to be paid for it. There might some programs like I think my program can give you an additional 2 or 3 weeks. Depending on you have electives where you like choose what you want to do. So maybe if you are doing an elective that is remote, you can add it to your maternity leave, but it would extend your year of graduation. So unlike roots where like they might put into consideration, so you have a kid and you can give you 4 months or 8 months, you must do the training as it is standard around the country, irrespective of what you're doing. Even pregnancy is not a disease, not a disability. Don't consider it a disability. So you work till the end of to the time you deliver, and then you take your 6 weeks.
Wow.
So it's something to just bear in mind as well, in case you are considering childbirth, if you are ready to have children, and we will say have your children in Nigeria before you come. But if you come here, still doable. People have their children in residency and still survive, even if you extend your training by 1 or 2 months. It's
Thank
doable.
you. Thank you very much. I have a question for Dr. Obadi and Dr. Tina, since they are together. Help me out with this. Um, I've heard that the Canada, US, Australia pay way better than the United Kingdom. Can you confirm that first before I go ahead?
Yeah. Well, it's something that is coming up really much. I think generally the Canada and Australia generally pay on the average a little bit more than the UK, per grade of doctors that you are. Like just today I was seeing a post where they were offering emergency registrars over 100,000 pounds equivalent of a salary, for an emergency, medicine registrar. For a reg in the UK, you'd hardly get up to 100K, as salary. You have to be consult is from when you get to consultant level that your pay, bumps up to from 80, 90 to 100, 120 and all of that. So of course it also depends on the level that you are in, and then also the country that you are going to, and the place in that country that you are going to. For Australia, um, because of because they're trying to draw in a lot of people, because it's a very remote place. If you're thinking of traveling to Australia, the flight alone is so far, you're far away from everybody. So the inducements have to be substantial to get people to come. So on average the pay would be a little bit high compared to the UK, and of course some of the perks too in terms of working hours, work-life balance. They try to make sure that it's not as bad as the UK is, just to induce people to come. So on the average, I would confirm that on the average the pay is slightly better. But then of course in the UK depending on the specialty, your experience, there are a lot of consultants and, not even consultants, even people that are specialists, regis, and all of that, that are also trying and, getting something, making it quite big here too in the UK. But generally, on the average, I think these other places pay much better than the UK.
What about family life, would you say? Um, how do you think family life is in the UK as probably compared to some other places?
Yeah. So in the UK, well, the thing is that the UK has its perks, aside from the fact that the NHS is a system that is very, very burdensome. It's a system that is almost drowning because it is very hectic in terms of work. Work is very, very, quite hectic. Work hours can be very brutal. But yeah, of course, like I said, it has its perks in terms of some of the benefits that you could get, time of training, going less than full time. If you are worried about your work-life balance, you can, you reduce, you can choose to not do full-time training. So some people go 80%
Yeah.
of training, some go 60, some go 50%. The only thing is that would prolong your training, but of course it means that you work less hours and you'd have more time to pace yourself for your training and where you are going to. And then of course, like the maternity pay that we have looked at, the maternity pay is actually is ridiculously good for a country like the UK. It is really, really good. So of course you must have worked up to a certain period of time in the UK for you to qualify for that. But it's very, very good. And not even that, even sick leaves and all of that, paternity pays, sick leaves. Like the UK now, you can self-certify for 7 days. So you can choose to say you are sick. You cannot come to work for 7 days on your own without getting like a report from your GP or your doctor on your own. I don't think you can do that in the US. I think I was saying something like
Even in
that. It's
Nigeria,
even
I
in
think
Nigeria,
you
sef,
can do
you
that.
understand. So even after you self-certify, you can choose to get in touch with your GP and ask for an extension for your sick absence. GPs can write up to a month, 3 months, 2 months, and you still be getting some pay because you have been certified to not be fit for work by your doctor. Of course, it will get to a level where if you've been absent from work for so long, then your workplace might refer you to occupational health and say, look, this person has been absent for work for so long. Can you assess this person and tell us if indeed they can choose to stay off work for this long, or what is the plan to get them back into work? So that's one of the perks of the UK. So it's sort of like balances itself somehow in terms of the pay is not as good as some of these places, but then when you look at some of these perks that people enjoy in terms of work-life balance and privileges at work and how you can pace yourself and all of that, it sort of like makes up for it in some way. So in terms of work-life balance, if you can choose to say how it would go for you. You can choose to say, I'm just going to put my head down, try to finish my training and move on. Or you can choose to say, I'm going 50% and then do 6 years for a 3 year training. Or, this kind of one now, it means that instead of working 5 or 7 days in a week, you'll be working 3 days in a week and be off for the remaining periods and all of that. So it depends on you basically. The system supports you to do that, which is good.
Wow, that's beautiful. That is something that doesn't happen in Nigeria. All right. So thank you so much. So I'm going to take final words from each of our participants, 1 minute each, and then we'll call it a day. This has dragged, this is almost 2.5 hours. So just say one final word each. We'll start in the order that we started. Dr. Obani, just you have 1 minute to just say a word, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. Thank you so much. Like, it's really, really nice to touch base with everybody again. Isika, it's good to see you. And Ruth, um, um, Dr. Sarah is not here. Like, it's just really nice to see your faces again. So that's one good thing, that's why I'm very grateful for what we've done today. And to everybody else, like, it's just wonderful that we're together again having this chat. I won't say I'm pro Jackpot, but I think it's something to really think about, and don't spend too much time trying to make up your mind and pray about it, trust God's leading, and if I feel like we should all move around at some point. It just exposes you to the world, and you get to see that the world is bigger than you, and you get to see that the world is yours pretty much, and in medicine too as a career, I think it's also important because you get to see what is happening in other places and you're in tune with all the latest advancements and stuff. So I highly recommend, like, even if it's not to come and work permanently and move permanently, but those just little rotations or short stints too would be very, like, it does make a lot of sense. So yes, just think about it too and pray about it too, and let God guide you.
Thank you, Tina. I appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Dr. Nsikan, 1 minute.
Yes. Yes, I would say that, like Tina said, is actually the exposure is really, really something. If you want to come to the US, please I would say, do not look at the total cost of what it would take you to come here. I believe that you take it one day at a time. I didn't know how much I had spent. In fact, that table was drawn in retrospect.
Yeah.
So I think taking it one day at a time is very helpful. If you have people that are willing to support your dreams and aspirations, that's also very helpful. But it's very doable. It's achievable. If something you want to do and put your mind to do it, you can do it.
Thank you very much. Dr. Ruth, the person in the most impossible world to go to as a doctor.
It's not impossible. I think I think that's what I really want to echo out there. Like bad news travels really fast. Trust yourself, trust in God. Block out the noise, have people in your corner that will encourage you, that will push you to know what you really want in life. And for me, it's really like trust that God will complete that circle of your life, right? And I never really tell myself like this is what I did that made me match into residence. Like everyone who asks me, I tell them, oh, it's God that made me match it. Like God brought me here. But I think that an important part is just making sure that you don't let don't let the outside environment crowd your head, and make sure that you're just keeping yourself in that space where you know that it's possible, right? And I think also thank you for organizing this. It's really great to see everyone. If you're my classmates were here, I think they've all gone, but thank you, Shion, thank you, Joshua, Vicky, literally, Ojone, everyone that was here. It was really, really great to have this session. And Tina and Isikan, please reach out to me. You're literally in my background, in my backyard. So reach out. Yeah, but it's really great to have this. Thank you, Chippers, for putting all of this together.
Thank you.
And if you have any questions, I think my number is on the group. I've gotten like a few direct messages, but if you have any other questions, like reach out to me. I don't always answer immediately because there's a horrible time difference, but I'll get back.
Thank you so much. Dr. Achama, 1 minute.
Okay. So thank you very much. Like I said, even in my previous talk, I'm not pro Japa, but of course it depends on you. Where do you feel you need to be? Where do you feel God is calling you to be? And of course, wherever you are, you can make a difference. You can have a very good and fulfilled life and career. My only advice is that if you have made up your mind, if you know that this is where God is calling you to be, start your preparations on time. I would even say if you know this is what you want to do right from medical school, start planning, start attempting some of these exams, especially the USMLE, because some of these things are, part and farm that you have done many, many years ago. Start gathering those competencies, those things that you need to apply, and then try to look for support and just try to tailor your practice. And then, of course, if you have to stay back in Nigeria, like the others have said, even if it just means coming here to just experience the system, just to see how things work in some of these places, it's very, very good to take back to wherever you are where you can see and impact your own practice in your own way. Because like we said, there are a lot of advances in medical practice that would be very beneficial if you had those experience or exposure that you can take back to your practice in Nigeria. So if you have the resources, if you have the opportunities, do not relent. Take it and try to come here, do something, and then go back if you have chosen to stay back wherever you are. Thank you very much.
Thank you so
Is that
much.
I don't know if it's possible to I don't know if how it will be taken out because of the way Bingham is, but if we get more of our medical students, at least from fourth year, the part and farm class involved in some of these talks, because I feel like at the point I was preparing for some of these exams, I saw people that had written these exams in their fifth year and sixth year, at least step one. And that was because people from their medical schools had gone ahead. They knew about these things. I was literally finding them out by myself, and there was nobody to talk to from my circle. I had to go out of my circle to ask questions. So there's a way to get this information across to them. I think that's to be very helpful. Really.
Yes, we'll share this video with the students. And we have very good close contacts with them, so we'll share it with them. Thank you. Thank you so much, everyone. It's good to see your faces. I've not seen your faces literally in a very long time. Sikan, Ruse, Timothy, Tina, thank you so much for making time to be here. We've taken 2.5 hours of your time. I knew you could have been doing something else, but thank you so much for being here. God bless you. Have a good day. And to every other person that participated, Sister Sheung, we see you and we see all your messages. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who has been part of this panel of discussion today. Please, if you have any questions, kindly put it on the group, and I'm sure those respective people that can answer your questions will answer your questions. Thank you so much, everyone. Good night. God bless you.
Thank you
See
very
you
much.
some other time. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Hi, everybody.
Bye.
Bye. Idra has trolled me throughout this conversation. Bye. Thanks. Bye.
Yeah, bye.